fun, fascinating, exciting school board member. We are so glad you're here. We have a quorum, and excuse me while I get myself together here. And tonight I would like to ask Mr. Dwayne Farrell to lead us in the pledge, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. And we will not have a student board member report tonight because, well, they're out of school, and why would they come here? We actually had to postpone our mock student board meeting, but we will reschedule that, so it should be a lot of fun and excitement. And we will move directly into announcements. We're going to start with Ms. Frog. No announcements? Mr. Hayes?
None, thank you.
Mr. Pinkston?
Just to Madam Chair, and I'm going to this is going to take just a couple of minutes. Would ordinarily space them apart, but since we don't have a meeting later in the month. The first one is during the holiday season, I want to thank Dr. Frank Boehm, one of our city's humanitarians, for drawing attention to an issue that we can't talk enough about, which is the plight of MNPS's homeless students. Last weekend, Dr. Boehm penned an op-ed in the Tennessean that summed up the challenge facing thousands of MNPS kids. Drawing on our own data, he noted that during the 2012-2013 school year, we had 2,821 students who met the government's definition of homelessness. The vast majority living with friends or relatives, lacked permanent housing. Hundreds were living in motels or shelters. Tragically, a small number were living in cars or the outdoors. Dr. Boehm used this data as a rallying cry for city leaders to help ensure better housing options, particularly for homeless families with kids in our schools. And in the holiday season, his comments got me thinking about ways we could help. And as much as we all would like to, Bransford obviously can't provide homes or stable family units, but what we can do is launch our own war on poverty in targeted ways. And some of this work is already happening, but I think we could step up our game to help homeless students and other kids living in poverty. Two areas jump out to me as low-hanging fruit for the new year. Number one, facilitating more and better access to health care, and number two, improving access to meals. As it relates to health care, I think we can do a better job facilitating medical, dental, and vision screenings and helping students and families connect to TennCare and ultimately health care. Healthcare providers out there manage this work at no cost to the school system and little, if any, cost to the recipient. All we need to do is do a better job helping organize and making that happen on a more routine basis. Regarding meals, President Obama's Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act is promoting universal meals through a new community eligibility initiative in 3 pilot states, Illinois, Kentucky, and Michigan. Beginning in fall 2014, eligible school districts in all states can participate. And in the pilot states, community eligibility has increased lunch participation by 13%, breakfast participation by 25%. There's no reason why we shouldn't be exploring this kind of approach to reducing child hunger in Nashville. I don't have any specific proposal right now, but I'm hopeful that as a group, as a New Year's resolution, we might find a way to better focus on using the infrastructure and resources of the school system to facilitate more and better access to health care and improving access to meals. That was my first one. The second one is shorter. I do have a specific proposal on another matter. As budget chair, I'm bringing notice that I intend to offer a resolution at our January business meeting asking management to formally integrate the expansion of early childhood education into a multi-year budget planning process. Dr. Register has articulated the need already for more pre-K classrooms, which is great, but I think it's important for the board, if we're all in fact in agreement, to formally declare that pre-K is a budget priority for us and then communicate that to the mayor and our colleagues in the Metro Council. The reality is if we're going to have a universal pre-K program, meaning every family that needs a pre-K seat gets one, we'll have to add hundreds, if not thousands, of additional seats at a significant cost. That's not going to happen overnight, especially without the state's support. But I think if we start planning now, I think we could get there within 3 years or so. So hopefully, increasing our investment in early childhood is something that everyone can rally around. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Shepherd?
I do have a couple. First one is the Fans Retro Classic High School Basketball Game event is scheduled for Saturday, January the 4th, starting at 2 p.m. at the Old Litton Gym on Gallatin Road. Boys basketball teams from Hillsboro, Hillwood, Hunters Lane, Hume Fogg, McGavick, Pearlcombe, Stratford, and Whites Creek will wear throwback uniforms of bygone high schools like DuPont, West, Bellevue, North, Madison, Cameron, Pearl, and Lytton. This is really fun. We went last year and had a blast. Tickets are $5 at the, in advance, $6 at the door. So come on out and join us for that, please. And I represented my colleagues on the Board of Education at the Music Makes Us Advisory Council meeting last Tuesday, held in the brand new state-of-the-art library at Wright Middle School. Dr. Jay Steele, Dr. Nola Jones, and Lori Shell presented us with the exciting results from a study done for the Music Makes Us program. I think we'll see the results of that later on tonight, but we already knew this, but now we have it in writing, how much music and the arts makes such an educational experience better for all of our students. And then lastly, I would personally like to thank Russ King and all the participants in our MNPS Diversity Task Force for their great work and their dedication to keeping our diversity plan a valid and true one. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kim? Ms. Spearing?
Yes, thank you. I'm planning a community meeting for District 3 on January 21st from 4:30 to 6 at Madison Middle on Old Hickory Boulevard. We know that our teachers have undergone many changes over the years. These past few years, high-stakes testing has become rampant. TVOS scores are now connected to licensure and evaluation scores. The commissioner says that there is no teacher morale problem, yet I hear differently from my constituents. So we will be talking about culture and making recommendations about how to bring better culture to the schools that's more conducive to learning. Bridges to Belmont announced that they will continue to provide 12 full scholarships to students at Maplewood and Stratford. And in addition, they will expand their generosity for an additional 3 scholarships to Pearl, Cone, and Whites Creek. So thank you very much, Belmont. I'm happy to report that the heaters have been installed in the Automotive Technology Center last week at Maplewood. This marks the first time in 6 years that the facility has had heat. The students and faculty appreciate the completion of this project, so to all those who helped restore heat, my sincere appreciation. Maplewood High School has scheduled a holiday luncheon for their community partners for next Monday at 11:30. Ron Woodard and his staff are not only educating students, but they're impacting the community, and thank you for that, Panthers. Hunters Lane students will perform their holiday concert this Thursday at 7 o'clock. Come on out and enjoy some festive musical merriment. Finally, our MNPS students are preparing to take midterm exams this next week. So good luck to all the students as they complete this last week and semester.
Thank you. Dr. Brennan? No. Thank you. All right, we will move into awards and recognitions. Mr. Henson.
Stuart Nicholson has been a part of Metro Schools most of his entire life. He attended Glenn Elementary and Highland Heights Junior High. He began teaching at Goodlettsville Elementary in 1951 and later took a hiatus from teaching to begin flight training school for the United States Air Force for 2 years. Stuart returned to the classroom and taught at Hillsborough High School for 10 years, also teaching at W.A. Bass Junior High, Isaac Litton Junior High, and Antioch High School. He retired in 1991 with 40 years of service. From 1963 to 1969, all certificated employees were participants in the Metro Teacher Retirement Plan. This plan was closed to new members in 1969 when MNPS joined the Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System. The Administrative Retirement Committee, or ARC, was established to oversee the Metro Teacher Retirement Plan, and in 2013, the last active teacher that participated in the Metro Plan retired. For 40 years of service on the Administrative Retirement Committee, First as an active employee representative and later as a retiree representative, Stuart Nicholson worked to ensure the retirement plan for teachers was improved and that the ARC assisted former educators in getting their voices heard. Even after he retired to a winter residence in Naples, Florida, Stuart would fly back to attend the ARC meetings, in the earlier years piloting himself. On a personal note, I have chaired the Administrative Retirement Committee for the last 11 years, and I've thoroughly enjoyed and appreciated Stuart's diligence and institutional knowledge. Every meeting, he would have his overstuffed 3-ring notebook, and when needed, he would turn to one of the yellowed pages to provide some historical perspective. Congratulations on your retirement from the ARC, and thank you for your dedicated service to retired Metro teachers.
Well, thank you. Chris won't believe this, but I'm speechless. This is an honor that I really don't deserve. Should go to members of the Administrative Retirement Committee. When I came on board in 1973, we had some real problems with our retirement. There were same things that were caused by the city council that we had no control over. But this Administrative Retirement Committee, you had 2 members from the administrative staff, 1 board member, and 2 teachers who had one thing in common. It was never a us versus them, never. It was what we can do to help develop a retirement plan that would be of great benefit to the teachers. And it was an honor working with those people. I wish that you, here sitting at the board, could have had the opportunity to work with some of the truly great people that I've had the opportunity to be involved with. They were super. And just thank you so much for this. And those years sure went by in a hurry.
Let's get can we get a picture?
Dr. Register.
I have joining me at the podium John Mark. Journey Johnson. Journey is retiring as the president and CEO of the YMCA of Middle Tennessee. And he's been filling this position since 2002. And prior to coming to Nashville, he served as CEOs of other YMCA organizations, a lot in Virginia, and that's his home state, Virginia. And I wanted to take this opportunity to recognize a tremendous partner for us. Journey has been a great partner in providing programs to serve young people in Davidson County since he's been here. And I can name many programs. I'll name a couple that are very important to us. The Fund Company is one. The work with the intercession this past year, and as we come into this year, that work. We have a representative with us today who is the director of the Black Achievers, Aaron McGee. We also have joining Journey today other folks from the YMCA. Bob Nistrick on the board. Please stand up. Let us recognize you. Councilman Lionel Matthews, who is on the YMCA staff, and Lisa Beck. And I think Lisa's probably the person who is the finisher or the closer for Journey, I think, maybe. So, but I think this recognition is very important because I want to portray to you the fact that this has been an organization that always is there to help. And I want to use one specific example, which is a program that I think is very important in an urban system that serves a high percentage of children who are economically disadvantaged, who are from families of economically disadvantaged children, and particularly when there's a river that runs through it. Like our river does, and that's the Learn to Swim program. And I think this exemplifies what kind of partner Journey has been for us. We've started 3 years ago. We're up to providing Learn to Swim programs for first graders. This year, our expectation is 4,400 students who would not have, many of them would not have opportunities to learn to swim. Often programs like this are overlooked. When we don't recognize the need, when we don't recognize that there are many children in our community who don't have that opportunity. And what I want to say about Journey is, when he and I first talked about this, there was never a hesitation, never a question about how much it would cost or what can you put into it. And it's been expanding ever since. And I really appreciate this partnership. I think this has added to the quality of Davidson County for many years that Journey's been here, and I appreciate the partnership. And Journey, we have a little token for you to remember us by. I'll open it up, and you don't have to show it to everybody, but maybe you'd like to say a word. Thank you so much. From me, you've been a great partner, and we wish you the very best.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Well, thank you. It has truly been an honor to partner with you these last 12 years. I've thoroughly enjoyed working with Dr. Register. I still remember that meeting where we put our heads together, and now to think we've got 4,400 first graders getting Learn to Swim lessons. And you might be pleased to know that our partnership here is now being used as a nationwide model of how school systems and YMCAs can come together to try to help our young people know both the dangers and some do's and don'ts around the water, learn the gift of swimming, and ultimately we want to reduce drownings, and that's what we're trying to do. And of course, we have joined hands to nurture the potential of our young people for many years. I was glad that Dr. Register introduced my teammates. I do want to tell you that our YMCA is committed to continuing to partner for years to come, and with leaders like Lisa and Bob and Linnell and Aaron, we're going to continue to do great work between the Y and the school system. So thank you for inviting me today. I am the son of a first grade school teacher, and so I saw my mom teach for 40-some years, and waking up early and coming home and grading papers. So I know firsthand the importance of just the great work that you do with our young people. So thank you, and God bless you, and it's been fun.
Bob, I apologize for misannouncing you as Chief Operating Officer. Thank you so much.
Well, he gets called a lot of things, but he does a great job for us. But anyway, thank you very much.
Okay.
And we look forward to
Okay, and before we move into public participation, we actually do have one last recognition, and that is going to a woman who this board has come to know and respect and love very dearly. Alvisha Wilson-Hawkins will be leaving us after tonight. Tonight is her last board meeting, and we've all had some pretty mixed feelings about it, but Visha has been the glue that has held this board together for a lot of years. She came over to, well, she came to the district as a board administrator, and then she went to communications, and we won't hold that against her. But then she was smart enough to come back and deal with us. Well, I don't know if that was smart or not. But she has been serving as the board liaison, board administrator since 2007. And she will be truly, truly, truly missed. The great thing is, we've still got Cameo, so I think we're going to be just fine for a while. But I wanted to offer my sincere congratulations to you and to tell you how much we appreciate you and how thankful we are to have had you. And so board members, if you want to share something with Ms. Hawkins, now's your chance. And if you want to just come around to the front for a second, please. You don't have a choice. Just come around to the front. This, my love, is for you, because we know how hard you've worked, and we really appreciate you. Thank you. So the good thing is Visha is staying in the district, so that's a good thing too. But thank you, Visha, we really appreciate it. And now we will move on to public participation. And board members, I promise you'll get an opportunity to embarrass her a little bit later. The board will hear from those persons who have requested to appear at this board meeting. In the interest of time, speakers are requested to limit remarks to 3 minutes or less. Comments will be timed. Board members will not immediately respond to speakers during the public comment period, but may follow up after the meeting. And since we have so many people on the agenda to speak tonight, I will call the first 3 people. If you will, first person up, if you'll come to the podium, and the next 2, please make your way up to get called on. Ronald Reed. Yes, you can go ahead. Steve Turner and Mark Rowan.
Ready?
Go ahead.
Okay. On September 10th, I gave the board a detailed report on the failure of the management staff of the Transportation Department to deliver a safe, effective, and efficient bus service. It was all nuts and bolts stuff. I showed you how the reliance by uneducated managers on bad software had led to both late and costly routes. I showed how the lack of preventative maintenance program had led to unreliable and dangerous vehicles while significantly decreasing fleet life. I showed how the improper training of drivers had led to accidents, incidents, and student discipline problems. I showed you how nepotism and favoritism had populated the management staff with uneducated, untrained, and ineffective people whose policies and decisions were making matters worse. I showed you how corruption was draining resources on frivolous perks and unneeded and ineffective contracts. I asked you to check this out for yourselves. I asked you to bring in an outside investigator from the state comptroller's office, and I asked you to hire an outside emergency manager. What did you do? You turned this report over to the exact people who have been failing this community all along. What did they do? They had a meeting with me where they tried to threaten and cajole me into toning down my accusations of corruption, surprisingly before they had even investigated it themselves. They didn't ask me anything else. I have not heard from them since. I gave them a list of managers who were related and the names of sources who agreed to talk. They looked into it, finding pretty much everything I said was true, then promptly replaced people's computers and attacked my sources. What's happening now? Everything in the report is still going on. There's still no outside help. They've fired no one, choosing instead to retain managers who have a history and a culture of attacking labor because they themselves don't know how to do their jobs. Look, all management is micromanagement. I have a solution to this crisis, but I need your help. I know you don't like whistleblowers, but whistleblowers have 3 skills you need. Number 1, we're going to tell you the truth. We're going to tell you what's wrong, okay? Number 2, we know what's right. That's how we know what's wrong. And 3, we have the integrity that your management staff has clearly proven that they lack. I want an hour of the board's time. In that hour, I'll tell you about the most important paradigm shift in management history and show you how it ferrets out all of your current problems in providing bus service while significantly reducing costs. I will show you exactly and specifically what they are doing wrong, and I will organize it into an easy, understandable system that you can apply to any department within the system. I will show you a clear path to getting the buses back on time every day while salvaging both the reliability and longevity of the fleet and drastically reducing the size of the bureaucracy. I will give you the consistency that leads to a predictable, accurate, and honest budget. And I will save you millions. But I can't do it if you don't talk to me. I work here. You have my phone number. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Turner.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Mays. I bring good tidings. Members of the board and Dr. Register, my name is Steve Turner, and and I serve with Mayor Dean as co-chair of the Nashville Chamber's CEO Champions. You may know that we are a committee of 22 CEOs who advocate for the academies of Nashville in our city's high schools. We were excited, very excited last month when we heard the news from Governor Haslam that Tennessee has made the largest academic gains of any state in the country on the NAEP, the National Assessment of Educational Progress. Among the 50 states, Tennessee went from 46 to 37 in fourth grade math. We went from 41st to 31st in fourth grade reading. We are still not where we want to be. We all want to be number one, but that is tremendous progress over the past 2 years. We wanted to come here today because we know Metro Schools played a very important part in the statewide success. In particular, we want to thank the 5,500 teachers and the 700 administrators in this district. Our teachers and school leaders work hard every day, and they have been adjusting to a lot of important changes over the past couple of years. We wanted to say that the success of the state of Tennessee is their success too. Your efforts are paying off for our students. Thank you so much for a job well done.
Thank you. Mark Rowan, and then next up will be Ralph Schultz, Summer Martin, and Gilbert Williams.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Register. My name is Mark Rowan. I also serve as a member of the Nashville Chamber CEO Champions. I'm president at Griffin Technology, a firm that has more than 300 employees here in the mid-state area. We design, develop, and bring to market a whole range of accessories for technology, and I also am a graduate of Antioch High School. And I would like to join Steve in thanking the thousands of teachers and principals here in Metro who've worked hard over the past 2 years to make Tennessee the fastest improving state in the country in education. Nashville's educators are changing students' lives every day, and I know this is true because I and other members of my company have spent a good deal of time in the last year working within Metro schools. We did this through opportunities such as the Pencil Foundation's Principal for a Day event. I had an opportunity to shadow Dr. Gary Hughes at J.T. Moore. It was a chance for me as a private business leader to better understand and appreciate the unique administrative challenges of running a school as compared to running a private enterprise. We've also had the pleasure of participating through the Chamber of Commerce with the Academies of Nashville program and our partnership with Hunters Lane High School and their Academy of Design and Technology. Earlier this year, Griffin Technology donated 25 Mac Mini computers to Hunters Lane, so students in that academy get to add Apple's iOS app design for iPhones and iPads to the skill sets, the marketable skills that they can learn while they're at that academy. My employees have enjoyed very much working with Dr. Susan Kessler and all the educators at Hunters Lane, and we look forward to seeing what the students will produce later this year. So from my experience being in the Nashville schools these past few months, I believe that the focus of the academies align perfectly with Tennessee's move to the Common Core state standards, and it demonstrates how those standards are being applied in a way to better prepare students for success in the real world. I applaud the work of Dr. Register and the board and for the efforts to encourage accountability and autonomy among the administrators across Metro schools. I have seen ample evidence in practice, and I believe that the Metro school system is at the forefront of badly needed innovations in education because of that work. And perhaps my greatest authority on the matter comes from a 23-year marriage to a lifelong educator. My wife is a veteran of both Metro Davidson and Williamson County schools and currently works as a private tutor with special needs students. And over these past few months, as I've relayed my experiences of being in the classrooms and seeing what it really takes to manage a school, she has been very keen to point out, and now you know what it's really like for teachers. I'm thankful for the chance to work with these educators, all of these men and women. It helps me realize that my job is the easy one. Few industries outside of professional sports and politics are subject to armchair quarterbacking as educators. And ultimately, for schools to improve, I believe the path to better education can only be forged by educators. Thank you again, and the school board, for your role in making Tennessee the fastest improving in the country. Thanks.
Thank you. Ralph Schultz.
May I yield more time to Mark? I'm just kidding. My dad told me one time to be brief, be bright, and be gone, and I'm going to shoot for 2 out of 3 tonight. You figure out which two. Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Register, and MNPS staff, you have heard from Steve Turner and Mark Rowan how much we value and treasure the relationship and the partnership that we have with Metro Schools as we all pursue together as a community the rapid progress and the rapid improvement that we're looking for in our schools. It's so essential to not only each individual's prosperity, but also to our community's prosperity. We do know that we all want the same things, which is for those young people to be prepared to advance themselves and fulfill themselves throughout their lives. Over the course of time, we've done many things together. Next week, we will share the school report card once again, and that's a long-standing partnership and tradition with Metro Schools. We also know that you have made some great strides in implementing important reforms such as the Common Core state standards and the team evaluation, but you've done it in a methodical, a thoughtful, and a collaborative way. And so tonight, as we celebrate among us the outstanding achievement of the state of Tennessee in moving its progress forward, we also want to recognize the very important leadership and commitment and contribution that the teachers of MNPS have generated, the principals, the school board, all of the administrators. This is very much a team effort, and we are proud to be associated with you as you make these important strides in a rapid way. So thank you all very much for your commitment, and I would just like to lead the crowd in applause for you.
Thank you. Summer Martin. And after Ms. Martin will be Gilbert Williams and Susan Pregel.
Good evening, board members. Good evening, Dr. Register. My name's Summer Martin. I'm speaking to you tonight because I have a master's degree. My husband has a bachelor's. We live in the Glencliff cluster. We are looking for schools for our children to go to, and we wanted to check out Metro Schools. In doing so, what I found was that Metro is doing a great job as far as growing from the point that we currently are at. So that was encouraging to see. As I dug deeper, though, there were some major concerns that I had about optional schools and how they're chosen and the lottery. And as you will see, I'm going to explain, because a lot of people that are listening may not know how this works, is what I found. Parents, teachers, principals even don't realize how this works. So first problem that I found with optional schools are there are special priority zones around certain optional schools only, and this causes students and parents to have unequal opportunities to attend Nashville's best schools. Basically, they draw a line around, let's say, Glendale Spanish Immersion. The children within that special circle get chosen first in the lottery. If there are any spots left, it goes to anyone that has applied in that cluster, and then after that, anyone in the district. What happens is this leaves families like me who live in the Glencliff cluster really no option or no chance to go to Glendale Spanish Immersion or Lockland or some of our other best schools. Second, like I do, live in the Glencliff cluster, there are not many schools in that zone that are adequate, in my opinion. My opinion is that a school should be succeeding at 70% or above, and that's what I would expect for my child. So if you turn the page and you look, halfway down you'll see Glencliff Cluster Elementary Schools. You'll see Whitsitt highlighted in orange and Fall Hamilton. Fall Hamilton is the only optional school in that zone. They are succeeding at 36% for reading and math. That means 36% are passing and the other percentage are not. My zone school is 26% passing and 20% those are not options for my child, and I don't believe that they're options for the children in Nashville. As you look further, the blue at the top, Glendale, Sylvan Park, and Lockland are all passing it above 70%. However, these schools are the ones with the special zones around them that give the children in those neighborhoods priority to go to those schools when they're already zoned for Julia Green and Percy Priest, which are some of Nashville's top schools that are not options. If you will look back at the front page, I just want to let you know that due to Race to the Top funding, No Child Left Behind.
Ms. Martin, we have to limit it to 3 minutes. We have several other people on the agenda, but thank you for the information. Gilbert Williams.
Thank you for this opportunity to present to you folks tonight. My name is Will Gilbert Williams. I am the namesake of 2 deceased uncles whom I love dearly. And for the past 3 years, I've been an exceptional ed bus driver, and I currently work out of the Stratford cluster under the supervision of Miss Sidney McLean. Now, ladies and gentlemen, when you look at me, you're looking in the eyes of someone who believes in the ideals and the ideology of what we do as a service-providing agency for Metro government. So when it came to my attention that there are those who not only challenge, but rather threaten the efforts that are currently underway in transportation, I felt compelled to speak to you. I'm not an idealist, but rather I'm pragmatic. I know that there are problems that exist within our department, but I also know that with a measure of due diligence, we can find solutions to those problems. What each of us as workers must do, and some of them are here tonight, is we have to be determined to do what we can to facilitate a kind of healing, if you will, at this time. And there are those who would insist that the transportation department is broken and needs to be dissolved or outsourced. I say absolutely not. What I see is an opportunity to accomplish greatness. It's been said that when life hands you a lemon, make lemonade. So I'm here to affirm that there are many, not just myself, willing to put hand to plow and take our place in the process of getting this department where it should and definitely can be. Now, there are some serious changes going on in the department at this time, as most of you know, and I welcome those changes because those changes represent growth. We drivers, we welcome Ms. Taffy, our new leader, and we stand ready to rally around her attempts to move this department forward. We all know that to have a great department, we must have incredible leadership. But to have incredible leadership, you must have the support of those who are being led. I stand before you today to say that I emphatically and passionately fully support our new leaders and members of our management staff. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Ms. Pragle. And following Ms. Pragle, we will have Jennifer Roya and Chris Roya.
Good afternoon, Metro Board. I'm going to really make it short and sweet.
If you could move a little closer to the mic.
Okay, hold on.
There you go.
How's that? Okay. Good afternoon again. My name is Susan Pragle, as you know. Thank you for taking my request to speak. I've been with Metro Nashville Board for 11 years. I drive for special ed. I came here this evening to express my opinion on the transportation department. I recently noticed some changes being made that seems to be for the better of the drivers and monitors, as that really boosts our morale. For a while, we thought things were going to go in the wrong direction and we were going to keep being stepped on, like stepping stones. But to my surprise, in the last few months of the school year, I have noticed the changes, have heard other drivers and monitors speak with excitement. The changes that are being made this far, we the drivers and monitors welcome them and hope to continue to keep going in the right direction. Myself, I say let the new changes being made continue, and let us as a team work together, give it a chance to grow. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jennifer Roya. I hope I didn't tear your name apart.
It's Royer.
Royer.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jennifer Royer, and I'm here to speak on behalf of charter schools. My son, Alec Royer, is a 5th grader at Nashville Prep, and we had did a lot of research, my husband and I did, going into 5th grade, because I feel like that was a really pivotal point in a child's life as far as middle school goes. And so we looked at our options of our locally zoned school, which is Donaldson Middle School. We also looked at other magnet schools, and we looked at charter schools. And what we found through all of this research was the best option for Alec, as far as the test scores, the enthusiasm, would be a charter school. And Alec is a A-B student. There's nothing wrong with his learning, but we also wanted him to continue to be pushed and not be left behind as far as learning to excel. And so when we toured the schools, we saw the enthusiasm that was in each and every one of the teachers, and the standards were the same, and the expectation was the same, and that really excited us. You said earlier, as far as music is so important, Alec's social studies teacher also has a music background, and though she doesn't have to, she incorporates that so much into her learnings each and every day. Almost all the teachers do at that school, and they come up with songs and chants and different things to make it interactive for the kids. And I think that's a best practice that some teachers do in other schools, but I think it's something that could help students throughout all of our schools. Because I feel like it's important that we do have an equal opportunity for each one of our children to go to school. We currently live in the Donaldson area, and we do that because Stanford Montessori is where we wanted our children to go to school. So Alex spent 7 years there, and his brother is finishing out his 7 years there. And like any parent, we just want the best for our child. We've seen Alec in this short amount of time. When we first asked him which subject was his worst subject, which subject he did not like, it was social studies. Now social studies, he is carrying a 97 average in. And I have to credit that to his teacher, Miss McDonald. He's carrying all A's and B's in all of his subjects, and he's enjoying school. We were really worried about the longer day, but he is really thriving at Nashville Prep. And we're just excited to get the opportunity that he has, and we hope that other students also have this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we'll have Chris Royer, followed by Trey Edmiston, Elius Lukes, and LaDonte Gregory.
Good evening, and thank you for your time, everybody. I just want to, piggyback on what my wife said. We are very blessed to have the absolute opportunity to have our son be able to go to Nashville Prep. When we did tour the schools, we were just blown away with the interaction and the engagement. And I don't understand everything too on how everything works, but they're not afraid to go look outside the box and find different ways of doing things to excel the children's experience and their grades to what it needs to be. I actually grew up in northern Vermont, very rural community, and have lived in Nashville for 15 years now. And just like any parent, we always want more for our children than what we had. And with that, especially when it came to the schooling, where I grew up, there was no choice whatsoever. I mean, the school district bus drive was a 2-hour drive from center. So, but with us having that opportunity to choose and look at whatever's best for our children is great. And, we talk about, best practices and look at what other schools are doing well, what other schools can do help, and just look and, I don't know, you want to call it synergy or whatever, to see what everybody can practice to see the results, especially of Nashville Prep, is getting in such a very short period of time. One thing I like the most about it, it is very strict and clear expectations of every single student. And and of course it's very early in their, their growing up and upbringing, but when we all become adults in this life, we do have clear and, strict expectations of what our actions are going to be in any job that we take. And with them learning that this early and in that kind of atmosphere is only going to allow them to progress as a young adult and going forward. So I'm a very, very, very strong advocate of the charter schools. I think it's a great opportunity not only for my family, but multiple families. And that's all I have to say. So, but thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Trey Edmiston.
There's been an update. Trey Edmiston will not be speaking today. I'm Elias Lukes. I'm the next one after Trey.
Well, hi, Elias. Go right ahead.
Hello to you, too. As you know, I'm Elias Lukes, and I'm a 7th grader at Nashville Prep, and I've been at Nashville Prep for 2 years now. And I'm here to just tell you about my experience at Nashville Prep. Regarding the educational system there, the rigor there, they have rigor, unlike my last school, to say at least. So their work is, you could say, at first when you get into their school, their work seems impossible. But as you progress into the year, you realize that you have the potential to do that work, but you never got to tap into it in the last school that you've been to before Nashville Prep. And then you realize all the opportunities that you've missed with your last school, then Nashville Prep, and you realize that you could go somewhere at Nashville Prep. You have dreams now. College is actually college is actually an opportunity now. And that wasn't an opportunity in my last school. And regarding the behavior there, we are not perfect. No school is. But we could say that we are exceptional. There has been no fight inside the school, 0 fights. Their consequence system there is very effective. You could say it's fair and just, so there's no really complaints about it. And if you're a exceptional scholar at Nashville Prep, they can take you places. If you cooperate, then it will be to your benefit. And just like my dreams after I've graduated from Nashville Prep, because Nashville Prep goes from 5th grade to 12th grade, and they guarantee you that if you graduate from their program, then you can go to any 4-year college of your dreams. And my mom was in love with that idea. So then after I graduate from Nashville Prep, then I hope to go on to some Ivy League school like Yale or Harvard. As long as I can get into one, I'm good. So then after that, I hope to, I haven't really thought about it, but I just hope to be successful in life. Thank you.
Thank you, Elias.
Next up is LaDonte Gregory, followed by Tina Papai, Chris Veach, Renee Woolforth. LaDonte, go right ahead.
My name is LaDonte Gregory. My experience in Nashville Prep is been fun because when I first got to Nashville Prep, I used to try to be class clown and I would be in detention a lot, but I've been there 3 years. In the last 2 years, I think I've improved because most of this year I've been out of detention and in enrichment playing basketball and stuff, active. So I want to thank the staff at Nashville Prep for that. And the academics, they're good because when I first got to this school, I was way below my reading level, and now I'm above my reading level. And on the TCAP scores, I was basic in every subject, and now I'm proficient in advanced. So I also want to thank Nashville Prep. And how it's been just fun. I mean, I go to school with Elias. He's a great student. Like, he showed me how to be a better student in Nashville Prep, like how to face the consequences when you show bad behavior. And Trey, he's not speaking tonight. He also showed me another way. He used to get in trouble a lot, and now he doesn't. And I really thank those two. And my health, well, I have diabetes. So since I've been in Nashville Prep, when I first got there, I thought I wasn't going to feel welcome. But now since I'm in the 7th grade, I feel welcome. And Mr. Fowler, Mr. Little, everyone who's been there, they helped me feel welcome and show me that I don't have to be scared to tell anyone I have diabetes, because it just makes me feel normal now that I know people care about me. So thank you.
Thank you.
Tina, up high. Chris Veach. Renee Wolforth.
Good evening, and you are one of the first people that has ever pronounced my last name correctly the first time that they read it. Congratulations. I'm up here with my daughter, Deanna. We live in the Hunters Lane cluster. I have 3 children, a kindergartner, a 6th grader, and a 10th grader. My older girls are both in charter schools, and last year was our first year in metro schools. For the 4 years prior to that, I homeschooled my girls. When we enrolled our girls in Metro, we knew that our middle daughter was academically gifted, and it took her less than 2 weeks in Metro schools to figure out that she already knew everything that they were going to teach in 5th grade. It took her less than 2 weeks to figure out exactly how much she could get away with and still get A's and B's in all of her classes. She was also helping my then 9th grader with her Algebra 1 homework and her biology homework. So we knew that it was pretty clear that she was academically gifted. We heard about Liberty Collegiate Academy and enrolled her after the first quarter last year. When she started at Liberty, she was reading at almost a 7th grade reading level. We've been very happy with the choice of Liberty. My daughter's teachers are always looking for ways to keep her academically challenged and constantly keeping her engaged. She recently had her reading level tested again, and she is now at almost a college level. My oldest daughter's experiences were very, very different. When we enrolled her at Hunters Lane High School, we knew it would not be easy for her because she's always struggled with academics in school. But she's always managed to work through it and ask for help when needed. In one of her classes last year, she asked for additional help. Her teacher helped her twice, then sent her to ask for help from other students. And when she asked him for help again, he told her to grow some confidence. That was not the best thing, that was not what she needed to hear. There were other issues at Hunters Lane as well. Daily fights at lunch, bullying issues, and the final straw was when she was shoved up against a wall and threatened. She no longer felt safe at school, so it made it extremely difficult for her to learn. So we started looking at all options, and eventually we chose to enroll her at Lead Academy High School for the 2nd semester last year. The differences between the 2 schools were like night and day. Bullying and fighting are not tolerated at Lead Academy High School. When she finally...
Thank you. Your time is up. Thank you. No. It's not? Well, I'm sorry. Excuse me. I've got a whole different thing going on. Okay. I'm going to add 5 seconds just because of that. Go ahead.
I'm going to let her talk about what happened.
My name is Dana. I'm a 10th grader at Lead Academy High School. When I went to Hunters Lane, I got the impression that the students ran the school. There was fighting during lunch daily, which sometimes resulted in 15-minute lunches. During a disagreement between 2 other students, I was pushed up against the wall and threatened, even though I wasn't involved. When I switched to Lee Academy, I was welcomed. I didn't have people pushing me around and threatening me.
Okay, now your time really is up. I'm sorry. Thank you. Artist Allison, Christopher Allison, and Sherry Patterson. Artist Allison?
Yes. Hey, how you doing, the board, Madam Chair? I'm here to speak upon my choice for Liberty Collegiate Academy. It is a wonderful school. And looking at schools for my fifth graders, it's first year in middle school, I looked at a school that would be good for him. When I met with the teachers at Liberty, they told me about what they were going to be doing, working on, and it was like, wow, I couldn't imagine that the kids would have to learn all of this. My son today, fifth grade, talks about college already. It's those teachers at Liberty that instills in their mind constantly that you can do this, you can do that. Don't be afraid. We're allowed to call them, we're allowed to visit them. And that's what I like about the school, is that they involve us as well as the kids too. So that was my choice for sending my son to Liberty Collegiate, in which he's an AB student. So proud of him. His reading level has jumped. His ability to write has jumped. And I'm proud, and I'm really proud of the school, and that was my choice for choosing Liberty Collegiate.
Thank you. Christopher?
My name is Christian Allison. Yes.
They have it all wrong on my sheet. Shame. Hello, Christian. Go right ahead.
I would just like to say that at Liberty Collegiate Academy, they say that the more homework that you get, the better chances that you go to college. I actually agree. I actually like the amount of homework that they give us. They tell us to do our homework every night, and they have consequences if you do not do your homework. For example, you might go to homework detention, and homework detention is basically just where you sit at lunch and they make you copy down a sentence front and back of a sheet. And I agree with the consequences, and I actually decided to do my homework every night perfectly, because I've been to homework detention. I don't like it. And that's because the teachers constantly tell us to do our homework better, and they give you your homework back so you can fix your mistakes, so you don't end up in the same place the next day. They also tell us if you get 4 demerits, you go to detention, which is basically the same thing during lunch. And I just want to say Liberty Collegiate is the best school that I possibly think I could go to.
Thank you, Christian. Sherry Patterson? Sherry Patterson? Monique Cummings? And Cassandra Curry.
Good evening. I'm Monique Cummings.
Is Sherry Patterson not here? Apparently not. Go right ahead, Ms. Cummings.
Okay. I want to thank you for the opportunity, first of all, to speak on behalf of my family. There's many times I think of what I want to say to the school board, and I've never had the chance, so thank you. I'm the mother of 3 school-age children, 2 of which are enrolled in charter schools, and 1 who attends a magnet middle school. I believe that it is my duty to ensure that my children are equipped for a successful future, and quality education is the key. My middle child graduated from a Metro elementary school, and this same school never allowed her to bring her math books home because we were told that the books were outdated. Her teacher assumed that she had a learning disability when her math work was not right. And I myself wasn't clear on what they expected her to do with her homework sometimes. I considered enrolling her in the feeder middle school, which is where her older sister was enrolled at the time. However, I was not satisfied with the overcrowded classrooms there, and the level of education that they provided, in my opinion, was less than satisfactory. They told me that they would send my daughter and 4 other students who wanted to learn to the library to do their work because the students in the classroom were too disruptive. I decided to research other schools for my middle school child. And when we looked at Nashville Prep, I was skeptical because it was rumored to be very strict, have longer hours, and it had a very rigorous curriculum. I wasn't confident that my daughter would be able to meet the challenges based on the experience that we had from her previous elementary school. However, enrolling my daughter in Nashville Prep's 5th grade class has proven to be the best option for us, and it has been a true blessing. I love the rigorous curriculum. My daughter meets the challenging curriculum head-on and no longer comes home confused about her assignments. Just this week, my daughter said to me, "Mommy, I love my school. I love Nashville Prep, and aside from loving her school, she's learning." She got the results back from the standardized prep test, and she got a B in the math. I'm so pleased with her, and I'm so pleased with the methods of teaching, the chants, there's zero tolerance, and...
Ms. Cummings. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Cassandra
I love
Curry.
Nashville Prep.
Cassandra Curry.
Thank you for having me this evening. My name is Cassandra Curry. I'm a grandparent of 2 charter schools, Nashville Prep and Purpose Prep. LaDonta Gregory is my grandson. I chose for him to go to Nashville Prep because he was reading on a 3rd grade level when he got to Nashville Prep. He was also diabetic, and my thought was this: because he was a diabetic and because he missed school because he was sick, he was passed on a lot and not really looked at as whether he was learning. Since he's been at Nashville Prep, every time he gets sick, the teachers make sure he's able to make up all of his work. They come and they sit with him and help him. Every time. I have a kindergartner that's at Purpose Prep. When he was at Metro schools, they said that he had ADHD and he could not learn. He is at Purpose Prep and they said that is not true. He is learning very well and he loves it. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, ma'am. Lanice Jenkins and Tracy Walden. Lanice Jenkins. Tracy Walden.
I am here to speak on behalf of Nashville Prep.
What's your name?
My son, Isaiah Walden.
What's your name?
Tracy Walden.
Thank you.
My son, Isaiah Walden, started Nashville Prep 2 years ago. Isaiah has a learning disability, also he has autism. But ever since he's been going to Nashville Prep, those things have changed. Isaiah has excelled in every aspect. Isaiah's grades was very low. He was like in the low 30s, his grades were, but now they have height. He has begun to make C's and B's, and I'm so proud of that. And Nashville Prep teachers are very encouraging to my son, and I thank them for that. And I just think this charter school, because when Isaiah first started, when he was in the 4th grade, he would go to school, and basically his teacher would let him not do anything. So I was pretty leery to where I was going to let him go. But when I heard about Nashville Prep charter school, Isaiah was accepted. And ever since then, I can say that I am very satisfied with Nashville Prep to and what they have done to my son this far. And I thank you so much.
Thank you. And that concludes concludes the public participation portion of our agenda. We will move into governance issues. On the consent agenda, we have been requested to pull, which one is it?
E12.
E12. E12 has been pulled at Ms. Spearing's request. No, this is the correct one, right? E12? E12, okay. So you have an older one. Okay, so it's E12. And Ms. Shepherd.
The consent agenda is follows. 1A, approval of minutes 11/12/13 regular meeting. B, change order number 6 for asbestos abatement services, Levi Industrial Contractors, M-477. C, change order number 1 for Julia Green Elementary School paving, BAC Paving Company, Inc., MBOE 800-380.13.21. D, Amendment C, compensation and rate adjustments for design and construction management services, Curie International, Inc., L2715. E, awarding of bids and contracts. 1, Achieve Learning. 2, Appleton Learning Corporation. 3, Cable Express Corporation, doing business as CX Tech. 4, Cambridge Educational Services of Illinois. 5, Computer Using Educators, Inc. 6, Curriculum Associates. 7, Ferguson Enterprises, Inc. 8, Nazar Consulting, LLC. 9, Southern Regional Educational Board. 10, Stellar Therapy Services, LLC. 11, the College Board. F, recommendation to surplus property, Old Jerry Baxter School. G, recommended approval of special textbook, Greenhouse Management. H, recommended special course, IGCSE, English 1, First Language. I, recommended approval of class bylaws and class contract. J, recommended approval of 2013-2014 operating budget amendment number 1 from the Budget and Finance Committee. K, recommended approval of request for compulsory attendance waiver. And L, recommended approval of 2013-2014 tenure. Madam Chair, I recommend that we approve the consent agenda as read.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Give me a second to open the mics up because I'm a little slow about this. Okay. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the consent agenda as read, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item number 12, E12, was pulled off the consent agenda at Ms. Spearing's request, and this is NCS Pearson, Inc. Hold on just one second. I'm fooling with my mics here. Sorry. Okay. We will take this, take a motion to approve this item separately, and then we will have discussion. Is there a motion on the table to approve the NSC Pearson, Inc. contract? Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Ms. Spearing.
Yes. The Pearson contract has to do with a replacement for the dibbles. And Pearson has the replacement called Ames Webb. And Ames Webb is very, very similar to the dibbles. And my question is, does this universal screener coincide with our philosophies and beliefs as a board? Does adopting the Ames Webb coincide with our roadmap to success? I don't think it does. 8 months ago, a group of administrators agreed that nonsense words would be deleted from the dibbles. Many, if not most, elementary teachers and principals cheered when Jay Steele announced that the district abandoned the use of dibbles. We knew that there would have to be another universal screener, and therefore we have this tonight in front of us. A panel of 23 comprised a committee to select the new screener. 70% of them were from a group of 5 from technology, 4 from psychology, 3 from exceptional ed, 1 from testing, and 2 from federal programs. there was one reading person and one elementary curriculum person and 2 people from EL, which consists of 17%. There were no classroom teachers or parents represented on this panel. One more reason why we have low teacher morale. When we ask teachers to administer an assessment, we give them no voice in choosing the assessment. As a state-certified reading specialist myself since 1984 and a trainer of teachers for reading over the last 15 years, I want to share my reasons for posing this assessment. It is not even in alignment with our district's definition of literacy, which I will quote. Comprehensive pre-K through 12 literacy is the ability to use reading, writing, speaking, listening, viewing, and technological skills and strategies to assess and communicate information effectively inside and outside of the classroom and across content areas. Reading is defined as a message-getting, problem-solving activity. Like the Dibbles, Ames Webb has a nonsense component. Now, you've heard me talk about the fact that a nonsense word is an oxymoron. There is no such thing as a nonsense word. A word, by definition, has meaning or carries meaning. So we confuse kids when we ask them to read something called nonsense. Where in the world, in this world, do we today, how many of us have read nonsense today? Or this week, or this month, or this year? We don't. We don't go home and read nonsense for pleasure. There's no place that it's represented well at all. Also, the definition of fluency with Dibbles and Ames Webb is problematic. Their definition of fluency is reading as fast as you can. So you are given a certain amount of time. Certainly it makes more sense with letters and sounds, but with continuous text, to ask someone to read as quickly as they can and call that fluency is problematic. If you were asked to go into a 3rd grade classroom and read, you would not go in there and read as fast as you could all the words in the book. What would you do? You would read with expression. There would be times where you would have intonation. You would pause. Stress on particular words. It's a completely different definition in these assessments than it is in our real world. These two, Dibbles and Ames Webb, also produces inaccurate information. As readers become more proficient at reading, their scores on the nonsense test often go down. Why would that be? Because they have developed a willingness not to accept nonsense and lack of meaning in their reading. It also gives false positives in such a way as I've had several parents to contact me about their child is reading at or above grade level, yet they have a poor score in nonsense words, so they are pulled for 30 minutes a day to go over nonsense words, even though they're reading at or above grade level. This is problematic. Williamson County adopted the assessment and then pulled it after 1 year. It did not meet the need of their EL kids. Can you imagine an EL student trying to make sense of something called a nonsense word? Or a student with limited language, or a student with language disorders trying to make sense of this. Like the Dibbles, Ames Webb is not meant to drive instruction. It's only to be a temperature gauge. However, teachers are expected to administer the Ames Webb 3 times a year for every student. The lowest 20% of the students are assessed weekly or every other week in place of instruction. Of course, this is one of the ways that teachers can choose to use for 15% of their evaluation. if they are, I understand that if they use this for their evaluation, they must use the whole component. So just taking the nonsense words out of this assessment is not the answer. If teachers can use it for their 15%, and they will be teaching children to read nonsense words. Basing teacher performance on indicators that are mostly meaningless does not support our ability to attract or retain the best teachers. In conclusion, I believe that we are replacing one flawed assessment with another flawed assessment to the tune of $1.5 million. Every dollar wasted on flawed assessments that don't drive instruction are dollars that could be spent to help children in poverty, to offer more services like interventions, to expand our pre-K programs. Most teachers don't want a universal screener because it doesn't inform instruction, and they tell you that on the website. This is not intended to inform instruction. If we tie this assessment to teachers' evaluation, we're asking teachers to go against what they believe is right, to spend valuable teaching time on nonsense words, to accept that there is a place for nonsense in reading. I employ our educators on this board to draw from your experience. Would you use an assessment that did not drive your instruction? And the parents on this board, do you want your kindergarten student, your child in kindergarten, coming home reading nonsense words? I personally believe that this should be scrapped and that we should have a whole new committee created under the auspices of our Director of Reading. And the committee should consist of reading specialists, reading coaches, parents, classroom teachers, in addition to others, in order to find the best universal screener. I will not vote for any screener that has a nonsense word component. And we also must ensure that our universal screener is aligned with our definition of reading and our definition of literacy. Thank you.
And Mr. Steele, if you would come to the podium, please, I want you to give some feedback on the Ames Web, if you don't mind, for the board. I'm sorry, Dr. Steele. I'm still getting there. And Dottie,
it still sounds foreign to me. This process has been going all year, and as Dottie Critchlow, who's the Executive Officer for Instructional Support, has been leading the committee, so I've asked her to prepare the statements around the process, who was involved, how the universal screener, what the meaning of it is, with the response to intervention plan that's required by IDEA and the state. So she can give you the facts and answer your questions around that. And it is our recommendation that this not be used as part of the teacher evaluation, as my recommendation was DIBELS not be used also.
Good evening. I prepared some information for you. I think you received some packets, and the packets had some models on the front that explained RTI. And I would be very happy to meet with you in the future to review this with you and talk about what we have been doing as our committee. We do have a committee representing different departments here at central office, and we chose to begin our work with RTI squared using central office people so we wouldn't disrupt the instruction in the classroom. We are about 3 months into this process. The state's requiring us to have a program in place by July 1st, 2014. So we are still in the early stages of getting this together. But one of the first things that we wanted to do was to explore what we needed to use for universal screener. And in the information you have, the universal screener is a required part of response to instruction and intervention, which is the framework that the state of Tennessee has adopted for the RTI process that we're required to put into place. If you look at the model, very briefly, there are 3 tiers to response to instruction and intervention. And the states put the focus on instruction, which happens in Tier 1. all students will be participating in Tier 1 instruction, which is about the Common Core standards. Tier 1 is driven by formative assessments that measure our students' mastery of the Common Core assessments. The Universal Screener doesn't play into that. The Universal Screener will direct what happens with interventions in Tier 2 and Tier 3. So the instruction that happens in Tier 1 is not driven by the Universal Screener. And I want to step back to say that we're talking about two types of assessment here. Formative assessment is what we use for the Common Core standards. The Universal Screener will be measuring basic skills. I think a lot of times in the past, and I'm putting on my principal thinking hat and my teacher hat as well, we were really busy with trying to increase the number of, or the percent of students that reached proficiency on standards. And we would focus on, a lot of times, what we call the bubble kids, the children that almost had that. And if we worked with them a little bit, taught them some test-taking strategies, we could push them up into that proficiency range. What this Universal Screener does, it goes a little bit deeper. It's a little bit more than just trying to diagnose why a child isn't achieving. It goes deep and it looks at what are the very basic skills that a child's missing, and we go back and provide those interventions for those children in Tier 2 and Tier 3. Also, it's going to reach the children that have already reached their grade level skills, and it will provide enrichment for them. So there's a lot that I'd like to share with you about this process for response to instruction and intervention, maybe at a future time. Right now, we have we put out an RFP, and again, we're about 27 people on the committee. We put out an RFP. We received about 9 responses to that response for proposals. These 9 responses were evaluated by a team of 7 people, and they evaluated the responses based on how well they met the requirements that we put in the RFP. 2 products were very close. One was Pearson, which came up with the highest rating, not considering the price. It was the highest rating based on what we were looking for, based on what the state was asking for us to do. And that was to measure basic reading skills, basic math skills, and writing skills for students in kindergarten through 8th grade. The one product that received the highest score, like I said, was Pearson. The next highest was Houghton Mifflin's Easy CBM. Easy CBM did not have the writing component, and they were going to require us to buy another product to measure the writing as required by the state. So not even looking at the cost analysis, though, the team of 7 thought that AIMSweb met the requirements over Easy CBM. And then when you add the pricing into it, which wasn't considered by the evaluators, we were getting what we were required to provide for a better price than we were with the second product. So that's why we're asking for Pearson. As far as responding to the nonsense word evaluation, we're exploring options with Pearson to determine what would happen to the impact of the children's scores if we deleted or didn't use the nonsense word test. We don't have a response back to that, but we are exploring it.
Any questions from board members?
If it's used, you're recommending, I think, Jay, that it not be used for teachers 15%.
Correct.
But what are the other options that they can use for that 15%?
That's been an annual decision by Human Capital and Testing and Research. They make those decisions.
There's a menu of options that teachers can choose from, and we recommend that this not be one of the options on there, just as we recommended Dibbles not be one of the options there, but it made it back on the list.
The Universal Screener will drive the interventions that happen for the children, not the instruction that happens in Tier 1.
Right, yeah.
One of the things also with this is it was the only product that was nationally normed, which was a requirement of it. Easy CBM math was not nationally normed, and they did not have the writing component, so we would have had to splice together multiple products. So this was one streamlined product that met all the requirements of the RFP and the requirements of RTI.
Why were more reading people not on this panel?
Dr. Lipsey was serving on this panel. And again, we chose an instructional coach from the elementary level who has, his expertise is also in reading, as well as we chose a coach from the secondary level who works with reading with secondary students.
So that's three out of 20, how many did you say, 29?
27.
27.
One of my master's degrees is in reading, so even though I was not someone that evaluated the products, I am on that committee for RTII.
Any additional questions?
Yes.
Dr. Brown?
I wanted to know if there was a time limit on when we have to accept the RFP. Are we pushed for time, or do we have time to wait for Pearson representation on the exclusion of the nonsense words?
Well, our goal is to roll the train. We want to spread the training out because there is so much training happening in the next year with Common Core, with new PARC, with new formatives, and a new universal screener. So February 28th, we go live with the training online in the modules that you've learned about as part of our technology plan. This would be one of the modules inside that Learning Tech professional development that all teachers would be exposed to, all 6,000 teachers. It goes live on February 28th. So in order, and the comment, the amount of 1.5 million was used. It's $70,000 at the highest level, $70,000 for all the professional development that would happen through the spring. 1 year's cost is $350,000. And that replaces the DIBELS. One of the differences is this is for every student in K-8. DIBELS was not that way, and for select students in high school. So this requirement of RTI and the universal screener is spreading out K-12, and more students are involved in it. So we wanted to roll that training out February 28th. This is being paid for out of federal funds in Race to the Top, and we do have to expend those funds because we have budgeted for it. We need to get the purchase orders in place. It was, as Dottie said, a 3-month process, evaluating, creating the RFP, evaluating and scoring, and then selecting the product.
Ms. Kim, did you have a question? Ms. Rowe?
2 questions. First of all, so I understand we have to have a universal screener. It's not a matter of us getting rid of a test, right?
Correct.
So we will have to replace DIBELS with something.
Yes.
Okay. The question I was going to ask is I was wondering if Dr. Lucy is here tonight, if she might weigh in on, is she present? Or?
No, she's not here.
Okay.
Regardless of who responded to the RFP, is there a known product out there that would in fact meet the requirements that Ms. Fearing just laid out?
A number of the products were standards-based and not skills-based, so that was a disconnect with, we're requiring something that's skill-based, and that's what the state requires us to use. So many of the products that we reviewed were standards-based, so we're not getting down to that discrete level where the child's really struggling. Ames Web was the closest that met the requirements that have been expressed by the state that we need to cover.
Did you have something?
Basically asked my question. I didn't know if you had an alternate test that you were aware of that no one
Yes,
here
I
was.
think the Easy CBM would be the one that I would choose of the ones that I'm familiar with. There's still the problem with the fluency, reading as fast as you can. I had a parent to call me today, or to write me today, saying that her child is reading above grade level, yet she comes home and says she's not reading fast enough. She's very expressive, but she's concerned that there's the push for speed rather than real fluency, authentic fluency. So how do you solve a problem that would be pervasive?
I think part of that has to do with professional development that our teachers will be receiving about the purpose for this assessment and how to use the data. This is only meant to be a screening, and that's why they're like 1-minute probes, so we don't take away from instructional time, but we still get that level of mastery that a student has on a skill. We're also measuring math skills and writing skills. And that was one of the concerns with Easy CBM. It did not have a writing assessment piece attached to it. It was going to need to be a separate product that we would have to buy.
Any additional questions? Mr. Hayes?
If we, I guess this comes back to the state requirement, if we fail to vote in favor of this tonight, are we out of compliance with something? Is there a penalty? What happens?
When I've asked that question, if we don't have something in place ready to go July 1st, our IDEA money may be withheld, and that's the money that supports our exceptional education program, and we're talking about millions of dollars.
We're a long way from July 1st.
But we are concerned about making sure the teachers have the time to be trained and they understand why we're doing this and how we begin to use it to change the instruction in our classrooms.
And I have a question for you, if you don't mind. And Dr. Brandon, I'll get to you. If another product is chosen, are we looking at an additional 3 months of processing, of a process of going through and trying to identify something else?
That's correct. We would need to go back and rewrite the request for the proposal, and then we'd need to go through the evaluation process and ask companies to respond to it. And we've already had 9 companies respond.
And so then we would be back into probably, let's just, for kicks and giggles, if it started in January 1st, we're looking at the end of March. And then what type of training time is involved?
We're looking at training about 200 people at various levels, from the district down to the schools, and then they'll in turn train other people. And our goal was to put this in the professional development modules that teachers will be able to use online. So therefore, we're not paying for time out of the classroom. We don't take time away from the teachers to take this training. You know, we want them to be in the classroom providing instruction. So this lets them receive that training on their own time.
And so that takes me back to, if we say we would rather have another company, we're looking at January, maybe somewhere around February before we can get the RFP process going again, which puts us 3 months out, which puts us late March or mid-April just to select a product. And then there's additional training on top of that, and this has to be in place by, did you say July 2014?
Yes, and there are other pieces to the RTII that fit on top of this. The universal screener is almost like the backbone to this process. So that will set us back in the rest of the implementation that we need to prepare to be ready to go July 1st.
Okay. And Dr. Brennan, you had a question?
Yes, I just wanted you to restate the question that you proposed to Pearson in terms of deletion of those nonsense words.
Correct. I have a call and emails into them, and perhaps they didn't work today, I don't know, but just exploring this, what would happen to the value of the test data if we were to take this sub-test out? It's a 1-minute screening test for students in kindergarten and first grade.
That's just a small portion of the reading screening.
Correct. It's one sub-test out of about 5 or 6.
And 1 minute?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Froke?
What about so the 2 complaints I heard about dibbles consistently were the nonsense words and the requirement that children be assessed on speed of reading, not necessarily, understanding or. So you're saying the nonsense words, there's a possibility to take those out, but is the test focused on speed in reading primarily?
There are 2 pieces to that. One is about, I know they call it fluency, and maybe we have different definitions of what fluency is. But just as a 1-minute screener, the number of words that child correctly reads in 1 minute gives you an indication of what their proficiency level is. The other piece to the reading is comprehension, especially as students get older. And there is like a closed assessment where you have a few words and a blank space and more words, so the student has to read and understand what are some words that can go into that blank space. That's more of how we measure comprehension on a screener. We're not looking to drive our instruction with that. We're looking to provide interventions.
Did dibbles also have a comprehension component?
Yes, they are administering what's called the days this year.
This year.
But they didn't before?
No, they did
That
not.
was one of the complaints, okay.
So we did away with the nonsense words and put the days in.
Any additional questions?
I'm wondering, could we defer the any movement tonight on this until we hear what Pearson's going to say about deleting the nonsense words?
My understanding is that we're good timeline-wise if we act by the first meeting in January. Is that correct? So we could do that. We expect to hear back from Pearson, but I think we can anticipate a positive response from them. But that'd be up to the board if you care to defer it. But that would really put us under the gun, so to speak, for needing to take action in January if we don't prohibit or inhibit the rest of the work going forward to get ready for next year.
All righty. Ms. Brogue?
I'm going to make a motion, and I'm also going to say I really like to hear from our director of reading also before we make a final decision, and anyone else that administration thinks might be appropriate to weigh in. But I would like to move that we defer this issue until our January 9th meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
The motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the deferment? Mr. Pinkston?
Thank you. I have made a habit of sort of not weighing in on assessment issues for a couple of different reasons, but one is just, I'm not an educator, and there are lots of technical aspects of this that are beyond me. So I really do look to management to make those decisions and for us to respond. But when I hear a career educator on the board, raising these kind of questions, I'll just be frank, it does give me pause. And I think the bigger issue is, particularly around these formative assessments, I think we all kind of understand the so-called high-stakes tests that comes at the end of the year, the summative assessment that the state requires, but it's all these sort of formative assessments over the course of the year is where I get lost and not really kind of understanding the bigger strategy. And I guess that's kind of where my reluctance is, not just on this issue, but just on any of these testing issues. I mean, testing is such a huge elephant in the room in the national conversation right now. Are we doing too much of it? Are there too many tests? Or is it taking up too much time? And I'd really just, this is an example of how it could be a good idea for us to just step back and understand, we're not going to solve it tonight, but understand really kind of what is the strategy? How do these series of assessments really kind of lead to a more robust kind of strategy and hear about that, because I just feel like we're just kind of getting pieces of it over the course of board meetings kind of on an ad hoc basis versus having a 360 view of what we're doing. So I support, that's why I would support a deferral.
Ms. Shepherd?
Just a commentary. I would, to your point about a career educator, and not to take anything away from Ms. Spearing, but I would venture to say that most, if not all, the people on this committee are career educators. So I trust that they would bring something to us that would have value. So it's my commentary. That's what they do.
Sure. And Ms. Spearing? Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Anna's comment. A psychologist and a classroom teacher, completely different spectrums. So that's my comment there.
Any other comments from board members? All right, we have a motion on the floor to defer, and it's been properly second. With having no other discussion, we will take a vote. All in favor of deferment, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
No.
Roll call vote. Dr. Gentry?
No.
Dr. Brannon?
Aye.
Ms. Spearing?
Aye.
Ms. Kim?
Aye.
Ms. Shepherd?
No.
Mr. Pinkston?
Aye.
Mr. Hayes? Ms. Frogue? We have 5 ayes and 1, 2, 3, 4 noes. Motion passes to defer. And we will have this on our January meeting. Dr. Steele, do you feel confident that we will have an answer from Pearson by then?
Yes.
Thank you. All righty, which means our first motion to approve has failed. Sorry. All right, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, recommended approval of resolution in support of adequate state funding for public education. Ms. Frog.
All right, this resolution grew out of some discussions that we had in our November class meeting, which is the Coalition of Large School Systems, and I mentioned some of those discussions at a previous meeting. But here's the gist of the resolution that I'm bringing tonight. In Tennessee, we have the second highest standards in the U.S. now, and yet we are 49th nationally in school funding. Our schools need adequate funding to effectively implement our new high standards and to continue to improve. And, you know, I hear a lot from various people about doing more on less. You know, we have to do more with less. And I think that sounds really good on a surface level, because it sounds, you know, sort of rings of fiscal responsibility, and I think we all want to be very careful that we're being good stewards with our funding. And a lot of the criticisms that I hear come out of really people that are sort of invested in private schools. So I've sort of been thinking about this topic since our last discussion, and I did a panel recently where we were talking about these issues. And, you know, when you're looking at some of the very best private schools in Nashville, the cost, I would say, on average is somewhere in the vicinity of $25,000. We're educating our students for around $9,000, and we have much more challenging populations to educate. So I find it difficult to believe that an extra $15,000 or $16,000 in funding really does not make any difference in a child's education. But I think there are two parts of the issues that we need to be thinking about. The first is whether we are being very good stewards of the funds that we already receive, and we are now having an audit, which I think is a great idea, because that is going to tell us, you know, are we spending our money effectively? Are we doing the best we can with what we already have? But then I think the second part of the issue is that we have to ensure that we have enough funding to continue to be effective as we move forward. And that's a discussion that has to take place between local districts and the state, because it is a shared responsibility to educate our students. So with that, I'm going to read my resolution. And it is called a resolution of the Metropolitan Nashville Board of Public Education in support of adequate state funding for public education. Whereas the Metropolitan Nashville Board of Education, the board, is responsible for providing a local system of public education, and whereas the state of Tennessee, through the work of the Tennessee General Assembly, the Tennessee Department of Education, the State Board of Education, and local school boards, has established nationally recognized standards and measures for accountability in public education. And whereas the board has been supportive of these nationally recognized, more rigorous standards and measures, and has been a leader in implementing the changes required for these more rigorous standards and measures. And whereas the state of Tennessee is currently ranked 49th in per pupil spending by the United States Census Bureau, and whereas the board recognizes that continued student achievement under these more rigorous standards and measures is not sustainable with the level of resources reflected in the Census Bureau report, and whereas the state of Tennessee has never fully funded BEP 2.0 since it became law in 2007, and whereas the state's own BEP review committee has repeatedly determined that the state has failed to address BEP funding inadequacies, and the committee noted in its 2013 annual report that the estimated cost of remedying these inadequacies statewide would be over $1 billion per year. And whereas the state's BEP review committee determined in its annual report that the failure to fully fund BEP 2.0 resulted in a $12,710,000 loss to Davidson County schools in 2013, and that in order to fully fund all recommendations from its own BEP review committee, including adequate teacher salaries, the state should have provided Davidson County an additional $74,572,000 in 2013. Now therefore be it resolved, the board hereby requests that the governor and the Tennessee General Assembly adequately fund public education in a way that is commensurate with the more rigorous standards and measures that have been implemented by local education agencies. Now therefore be it further resolved, the board hereby invites other member districts of the Coalition of Large School Systems, CLAS, to collaboratively initiate discussions with the Tennessee Department of Education and the Governor's Office regarding adequate school funding.
Is there a motion to adopt the resolution made by Ms. Burke?
So moved.
All right, it's been, I always forget to turn my mics on. One moment, please. All right, motion has been made and second. Any discussion? Mr. Pinkston.
I just want to say thank you, Ms. Brogue, for bringing it. It's an important issue. It gets very little attention in the past couple of General Assemblies, the fact that we do have an underfunded education system in the state. I do have a little bit of historical context that I just wanted to share. Of course, as we know, the basic education program was established in 1992 after several years of litigation by small school systems. By the time the mid-2000s rolled around, most people who had been following the BEP formula believed it had been outdated because of demographic shifts and economic shifts that had happened in the state and that it needed to be revisited. It was, as Ms. Froeg mentioned in the resolution, it was revisited in 2007, upon which then Governor Bredesen, the legislature, established what was called BEP 2.0. At the time, it was coupled with a sizable increase in the tobacco tax to help fund the early phases of the new investment. At the time, the tobacco tax tripled. But those who were involved in it at the time, including myself, knew that it was not going to be adequate and that the state was going to need to continue to invest more year after year after year. Then 2008 came and the Great Recession happened, and that just set back everything. And it set back state revenues, it set back local revenues. Obviously, I know this school system had a difficult time through that period, as did all the school systems around the state. But now that the economy is turning back around and revenues are pointed in the right direction and the recession is in the rearview mirror, I really do think it is the right thing to do to encourage the state to begin reinvesting in the BEP and to follow through on the original commitments. So thank you for bringing it, and I'm obviously voting yes.
Any other discussion? All right, motion has, Ms. Kim?
Where do I start? So, it says a resolution in support of adequate state funding for public education. I mean, it's hard to be opposed. I mean, obviously, so yay, more money. So I think that, but at the same time, I feel like my vote, to the degree I have pause, it actually isn't about the idea of, conceptually of, who can be opposed to getting more money, because we could potentially use it. But it's also true that assuming the $74 million, referenced here, that basically boils to $900 per student across the system, which is not chump change, to be clear. And I say, if we can get, great, I'll take it, we'll take it. So that's not the issue. But it's more just when I think about energy management and our limited focus, not because we're not willing or not because we don't, spend lots of time and energy trying to make the system better. But the reality is that likely we can only drill down on a handful of things in the next 4.5 years, because we have 4.5 years to meet the goals that we set forth in the 2018 plan. Things like moving, 60% of our kids one proficiency level each year. Right now, this year, it was 3.4%. ACT scores actually dropped this year. So we all know, there's much to celebrate, in terms of the overall growth of the state, and even wins here in the district, but we also know we have a long way to go. And so we have 4.5 years to do that, and we can do it. We see what's possible. I mean, the students who came and spoke earlier show what's demonstrably possible. And so I guess the question is, this also feels a little bit like we would be going down a bit of a rabbit hole, and lots of energy would go into this particular activity. Maybe not. But that's what I worry about, is just having tussled with this state, we have in the past, like, this strikes me not necessarily as the highest value add thing that we could do. For example, I could imagine right now, to Ms. Froeg's point about what are we doing right now with the $9,000 roughly per pupil spending that we do get, fully a third of it, even at the 17 pilot autonomous schools where principals do have, in theory, budget autonomy, still even in those 17 schools, a third of it is not within their control. A third of the 9,000. So they're getting a limited amount of even of that the money we're giving them. I mean, that we have. They get a limited amount, they have limited control over it, and therefore they're not able to make all the choices on the ground for their community that they need to make in order to meet these goals. And that's just for the 17 pilot schools. For schools that aren't part of that pilot, they get no control. And so there's no incentive even built into the system, to enable leaders on the ground, our CEOs, 157 of them on the ground, to do what's required because they have no control of the actual spending. Whereas in the normal world, there's no Starbucks, there's no McDonald's, there is no business on earth where we would say, make sure that you hit these very ambitious goals by 2018, but by the way, you have no control of the budget, or you have control of 2/3. And so when I think about what we could do, though, to unleash the potential across the system and the energy we could spend to loosen up that money so that it goes to the school, so that all of our schools have the same access the way Randy Dowell does at KIPP or that Ravi does at Nashville Prep, then those leaders then are set loose to decide what they need to do. So that's, for example, one area of work that I could imagine this board not only like digging into, but then being wildly successful, seeing to completion. And in so doing, unleashing lots of energy across innovation, excitement, control by principals and teachers within a school community to do what is necessary. And so Mr. Pinkston talked about the elephant in the room earlier, and I think you're right, Will's right about the testing as being sort of the elephant. I would say the bigger elephant is that right now we're even dictating those tests to our school leaders at all. So that when I am out in the community, as I was this week, talking to parents and then two of my principals, one of the principals is telling me, just give me the autonomy, give me the control. You can fire me if I don't meet your expectations within 3 years. That's fine, I accept that deal. But at least allow me to lead the way I see fit in concert with my teachers and with my parents and the needs of my specific community, which, by the way, are not the same as Nashville Preps, which is not the same as Liberties, which is not the same as Megs, which is whatever. And so, and I hear that over and over, they're like chafing, under the fact that they can't make all the decisions they want on tests, for example, and they can't make all the decisions they want about how to spend the money. And so you can imagine, again, this is not necessarily an either or proposition. I'm just saying that I would love to really consider, within the context of all these discussions about budget, how do we loosen up the money and make sure that more people on the ground, in fact, have access to it and then responsibility and accountability for spending it. And I think a lot of people would, in fact, accept that bargain.
I'd like to respond, and I will defer to you in a second, Mr. Pinkston. Two things. As I read through this resolution, what I see is no action that we are pushing towards this district. What Ms. Froeg is asking in this is for the governor and the Tennessee General Assembly to adequately fund public education. It also invites other large school systems from around the state to collaboratively, initiate discussions with the TDE. And regardless of any previous conversations that we've had with the Department of Education, $74 million is a lot of money, regardless of how you break it down. That's money owed this district, and that's money owed to every other district in the state of Tennessee. And I think it's absolutely fantastic that we brought this, that Ms. Froeg has created this resolution to bring attention to it. It's not to say we're going to get a dime of it, but at least we've brought attention to the fact that we know. If someone is stealing your money, and I'm not saying this, maybe I shouldn't use that. Forget that, media people. If someone is coming into your house and taking bread out of your cabinet and you know they're doing it, but you don't address it, you're going to go hungry. And this is a form of addressing the fact that, neighbor, stop taking my bread out of my cabinet. Let's work together and try to find a reasonable solution if you're hungry. So I think that here we are addressing the change in the BEP funding And I think it's, for, lack of anything greater to say, I think it's absolutely perfect timing for this, because at least we put it out there. And I would love to hear any comments you have on it, Dr. Register.
I think I support the resolution. You haven't asked me about that, but I think it's a great move to look at adequately funding public education. I think the state needs to continue to look at that.
Mr. Pinkston, you had a comment?
Yeah, I mean, I just would say I think it's important to not confuse issues around budget autonomy with budget adequacy. And I think by the state's own analysis, the system is underfunded. And when you just look at history, the entire system of funding public education in the modern history of the state was born out of a group of school districts rising up and saying, hey, there's not enough resources here, and we all need to do more, we need to do better. On the issue of budget autonomy at the school level, I would commend people, if anybody hasn't seen it, to read Joe Bass's letter to the editor in the Tennessean today, setting the record straight on some inaccurate comments that were made by a columnist a few days ago who said, basically, we're not doing school-based budgeting. That's just not true. The entire system is in progress of moving to school-based budgeting by 2015, and there's probably going to be lots of lessons learned along the way, but at the end of the day, autonomy is different, in my opinion, than adequacy. So I think it's important. And to me, the most important clause in this resolution is the part that calls as Chairman May said, to collaboratively initiate, or whatever the term is, discussions with the other large school districts. I mean, if we can speak as one voice and bring others into the conversation, I think that's a very powerful thing.
Ms. Perlin. I was just going to say, well, first of all, I want to say the real impetus of this resolution is adequacy of funding. And that is a little different, some of the things you're talking about, but there's nothing in this resolution that prevents, us having any of those discussions, and I think those are important discussions to have too. And I think also that, this resolution is, I tried to draft it in such a way that it is not seen as in any way adversarial. It is a request to come together to really start discussing this, because we have a state legislature that has passed a law on this that is not being, there's no compliance with the funding aspect of that. And I think more strikingly, the state's BEP review committee for several years has said we are not being adequately funded, and that's a real problem. And so the fact, I think that, I didn't know the gap that we had between what we are expected to receive and what we actually receive, and it's pretty vast. So my hope is just that this will start discussions statewide and with the state, because as I said, this is really a shared responsibility to make sure our children get a good education. It had part of this responsibility lies with the state and part lies with us. So I absolutely think we should continue with the audit. We should continue to have discussions about school autonomy and school-based budgeting, but we also need to be talking about whether we have the resources available to do what we need. That's it.
Dr. Gentry?
I'm going to roll my little boat over here to Ireland, so I don't get myself. And I think part of what I hear, and I think when you mentioned the panel that you participated in last week, is that word adequate. And we get criticized by other schools, and the person that was sitting next to you that says, we're able to do what we do, and you've had some articles that we've been able to be successful even with the funding that we've received. And I think part of it is we don't want to make it seem as though we're using it as an excuse. And so the word that I would use is not really adequate, because even if it's incompletely funded, there's a formula that says you should get $10 and we're getting $7. So it's not completely funded. But the point being, and I don't know how we tweak this, is that even if completely funded, then it's not adequate. So the formula in and of itself does not completely fund what we would say if we were to outline the needs. If we were to go to each one of these CEOs and they put together a needs-based budget based on the community that they serve, the complete funding of the BEP 2.0 would not get them what they needed. So I think that the concern, or what we want to make sure is not missed, is while this is happening, we still have to find a way to achieve the success as we've defined it in 2018 with what's available to us. And I think that's the part that we don't want to lose, and I think it's a matter of making sure that energies are reserved and attention is focused on that this doesn't distract us and continue to be the banner we keep waving when we don't reach those benchmarks that we've laid out for ourselves. So I think that that's just what we want to be very cognizant and careful of, is that we don't continue to reference the incomplete funding of BEP 2.0 in the same context of academic success and achievement.
Well, I sure do think it helps.
Well, I mean, it would make an impact, but what would help, more money, and what a lot of literature will tell you is not the solution to the problem, but adequate appropriation and application of the funds that you get available. I could give you $10,000 more per student. The right teacher in the classroom, the right leader in that school, the right resources purchased with those funds are what's going to make the difference. So, and I think that that's where the concern is, to make sure we don't allow this to become the umbrella under which we have the conversation about student achievement or the lack thereof.
I think we have to do both. I really think we need to be asking for more funding, and then we also need to be doing our part. So just want to make that clear.
Any additional comments? All right, we have a motion for adoption of the resolution. It has been properly seconded, and we have really discussed it. We will take a vote. All in favor of adopting the resolution, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Froh. And now, after much anticipation, we will have the director's report. Dr. Register, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have 3 items to report on tonight. The first one is, actually all 3 are very good items to report on. And first is University of Kansas Music Research Project that was implemented as a part of the Music Makes Us program that we've been into now. And I want to recognize Dr. Steele to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Register. Is this on?
Yeah.
All right. Let me also introduce Lori Schell, who is the Director of Music Makes Us. And you all have a folder in front of you, or a booklet in front of you that contains the detailed research report. So we're going to give you brief highlights, and I'm going to go very fast. This story got over 19,000 hits on the website. It is the most clicked on story in MNPS, and we're very proud of this. It's having far-reaching effects across the entire world in music education. And I'm very pleased because I am a former music educator. So this is a baseline research report that was conducted by the University of Kansas, and you can see that Dr. Becky Eason and Dr. Christopher Johnson were the 2 researchers that were hired by Music Makes Us to do this. It was a qualitative and a quantitative study, and it was there we go, I knew I wasn't on. It established a baseline of data about music participation in metro schools to better understand the potential effects and implications of Music Makes Us. So there were 5 research questions that you see on the screen in front of you. It was about relationship and causal effect. What relationships exist among music participation, student characteristics, student engagement, and academic achievement? To what extent does music participation affect school motivation and engagement? To what extent does music participation affect academic achievement? To what extent does music participation affect student identity and social structures? And the final one, to what extent do students make connections between music and other areas of school and life? There were 6,006 participants in the study that were in grades 9 through 12, and they're in the student data analysis. In the music surveys, there were 71 students, grades 5 through 12, and then the focus groups, there were 93 participants in grades 5 through 12. So here's an overview of the key findings, if you can read that.
It's in their books.
It's also in your book. What page is that on?
It's in the executive summary.
In the executive summary toward the front of your book. You can find it there on page 7. There were 3,897 seniors in 2012 that had no music, 1,169 that had less than 1 year, and 940 students that had greater than 1 year in music. You can see down the chart there that the attendance rate is higher, 93% for students with greater than 1 year compared to 91% less than 1 year and 87% with no music. I'll also point out the discipline. Every indicator that you can imagine follows the same pattern. Those students in non-music had lower or greater, depending on what particular indicator you're looking at. Grade point average was lower, graduation rate was lower, 60% compared to 91% with greater than 1 year of music. ACT scores were also higher for music students for less than 1 year or greater than 1 year. On-time I'm going to pull out some of the major emphasis of the study. On-time graduation rate was 91%, as I said, for students with greater than 1 year of music, compared to 60% students with no music. Even 1 year of music brought it up to 81%. So that shows that students are more apt to be engaged. Some really digging deeper into data. The Latino population, those who had no music, had a 52% graduation rate in 2012 compared to 89% with students with greater than 1 year of music in the Latino subgroup. So you can see across the data there, in every subgroup, the more participation in music, the greater the graduation rate. On the qualitative, there were qualitative threads that were identified throughout the study. Music and identity. It gives kids an identity, a sense of belonging. Habits of the mind. These are quotes from the students. Leadership is something that I learned fully in band that has definitely helped me in the regular class. It helps me with self-control. Music skills transfer. It's not only about being able to play an instrument, but it also transfers into all the classes of listening, working collaboratively, into their math classes. Also, music is a motivator. It motivates kids to come to school, keeps them more focused and ready for other classes. And this is a direct quote, "On the days I do have something music related, I am much more willing to get out of bed than days I do not have music classes." Well, I think we all know that, and I know Anna, as a band parent, understands that. Music and mood. I feel relaxed and happy and feel very good about myself. I feel like I've accomplished something. It's very rewarding. I feel recharged, full of energy and happy. And the music in the future. I want to keep music in my life. So the recommendations from the researchers were that we must identify the causes of high school music attrition and develop strategies to reverse it. Because if you look at the data, high school has the lowest participators. It's 100% in elementary, it drops in the middle, and continues to drop in the high school. Continue to expand music program offerings and access. We've been doing that with Music Makes Us. Ensure continuity in choral music for boys across elementary, middle, and high school. We've been putting the choral programs back into the middle school. Now we have to look at the marketing so we can get more boys in that and make sure that we have the continuum K-12. Extend the ensemble building nature of band classes to other music classes. Kids like belonging to that performing group. So now most of you have been able to witness the mariachi programs, the world percussion programs, giving kids a sense of belonging to a performing ensemble. And then expand non-traditional music classes to attract a broader range of students. And we have doubled the number of participation in the non-traditional programs and hope to do that again. So in summary, the findings show that increased music participation has a very direct and indirect effect on positive outcomes in student achievement and student engagement. That more student participates in music, positive benefits become more evident. So these are some major findings. Compared with non-music students, students participating in more than 1 year of music in metro schools are 7% more likely to come to school each day. You do the math there, that's big numbers coming to school each day with 83,000 kids. Receive 26% fewer discipline referrals, earn a 15% higher grade point average, are 52% more likely to graduate from high school on time, and score 16% higher on the ACT English and 9% higher on ACT Math. So the implications for the future, that we must counsel and schedule students, recruit a high-quality teaching workforce, and build facilities to match program quality. That's one of the charges that I've given Lori and Dr. Nola Jones, is to recruit the best teachers in here from around the world, and they're doing that very well. but once they get here, they've got to have the facilities and the infrastructure and the instruments to do what we need them to do. How can we develop a music education system that reaches as many students as possible and offers interested students a pathway through beginning, intermediate, and advanced music learning? And knowing that the K-8 music education trajectory sets the stage for what it can accomplish in the high school, what do we need to do at each level to strengthen it all the way through the K-12? And then the final one is an investment in music is an investment in our students' futures. And I think we all agree upon that. That's been part of the conversations tonight, is the skill sets that we are seeing, what employers are looking for in their workforce today can start in a music program. So we're very pleased with the research, and if you have any questions, Lori's been leading this project and working with the researchers from Kansas and a colleague in California to put together in a nice format the document that you have in front of you. So we'll take questions. That was fast.
Ms. Barron?
Yeah, thank you, Jay. This is very exciting, and I want to hear from you. I want you to answer this question. Sure. I hear from like high school music teachers and middle school music teachers that their fear is that with the screener and other assessments, that kids will be pulled out of their music classes or art classes because they can't miss core curriculum subjects.
Well, I'm the best person to speak on that because I completely disagree with that philosophy. Kids, that is what they come to school for. That's for a lot of these kids. They're engaged. I was in H.G. Hill Middle School this week and met, I'm not going to call his name, but he has a great rocker name. And he's been struggling in school. Parents are incarcerated, lives with grandparents, and this is what he comes to school for, to be in that rock band. For him to get pulled out of that to do an intervention or any type of assessment, to me, is a travesty. So working with the principals to understand, we've built in intervention times into the middle school period. And that's extremely important. And they're flexible times. It's based on mastery. So when a kid masters the skill, that changes, and maybe it becomes enrichment, but not to pull them out of the related arts programs. That goes against every research that we can find on kids succeeding in school.
Right, thank you.
And I will speak as a parent of a former flute player for 4 years. Before she started playing flute, she was so-so. And after she got into the band in middle school, it took on a totally different meaning for her. Her grades, I did see her grades increase. And the one thing, the behavior issues, any behavior issues, were almost non-existent because she knew from mom that if she misbehaved, band would be the first to go. So she just excelled. So I'm all on board with this program. I think it's fantastic. Any other comments from board members? Ms. Shepard and then Ms. Froeg.
I just want to thank Lori and Dr. Steele and Dr. Nella Jones. I've been a part of this since its inception, and thank you, Dr. Steele, for asking me to be a part of it. It's so exciting to see how much it's grown since the early days, and the meeting the other day, I told Dr. Jones today, was phenomenal, primarily because we got to, see firsthand we already knew what they were going to say, but at least now it's in writing. And hearing the students give their perspective at a middle school level, how much it means to them to be involved in that program over there. So thank you very much for doing all that you do for this. Thank you.
Ms. Froeg?
All right, former music major myself, I have to say, yay! This is wonderful. I'm so excited about it. But I also wanted to, I just don't, and I'm sure this is in here, and I probably should know this, but I want to just can you give me a brief overview of what this looks like on the ground? I see what the goal is, that we have every child involved from kindergarten on, but how many, you're talking about choirs, and how many, and where are they, and
well, currently, as Dr. Steele said, we have 100% participation at the elementary level. At the middle school level, we have band in every middle school. We are in the process of restoring chorus at every middle school.
How many do we have now?
Currently, we probably have 6 to 8. We have 4 new choral teachers this year, which is a terrific step in the right direction. At the high school level, we have band in every school. We have choruses in most of our schools. And I would encourage everybody to look at our new website, musicmakesus.org, and it will tell you precisely what programs are where. It has a great lexicon of what programs are offered at which school.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is that here?
Thank you very much. We're the one, and you may have said this when I was out, but I want to say add one postscript, and that is that a major part of and what's embedded in our strategic plan is the social and emotional development of all of our children, and we think this Music Makes Us program certainly feeds that, and we're seeing the results of that, and it's great to have an independent research project that shows us concrete examples of how it does make a difference. So thank you very much. Laurie, thank you for the great leadership in the program. Our next report, I'll ask Chris Weber to come up, and I'm going to notice the time and ask Chris to be very brief with this report, but we'll also answer as many questions as you'd like. Let me give you a quick introduction. Our Student Assignment Task Force met last week?
Yes, December 3rd, last Tuesday.
Last week. And the information that was given has been included in your packet. It was the first report. It's really a baseline report, but because we had data from the past, we were able to show you some change from the past or growth from the past. But this is the first report of data since the board adopted its diversity plan, and we feel like it gives good baseline data, and I'll ask Chris to very quickly just review the reports that were given, and we'll see if there are any questions from board members based on those reports. Chris?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Register. The reports were provided in your packet, and they are the same reports that were shared at the task force meeting last week. I want to thank the board members that were at the meeting last week, as well as the members and their contribution that they made last week during all the conversation that we had. The 2013-14 diversity report, it accomplishes two goals within the diversity management plan. First off, it helps to highlight the status of diversity within each of our schools and the district as a whole. And the second part that it accomplishes is provides a sense of analysis for the 4 different work groups to consider, for the board's task force to consider, for the administration to consider, and to help guide decisions as everyone moves forwards. So to just start with an overview of the report, it gives you a baseline status in which 47% of our schools meet the definition for student enrollment diversity. Now that is the same percentage as last year, so this report compares 12-13 with 2014 data, 2013 and 14 data as well. There are 63 district schools that meet that definition for student diversity, and the report breaks down and also looks at charter schools, and there are currently 30% of the charter schools that meet the definition for student diversity, which is an increase last year over 19%. One of the important figures that you see just covered on the highlight of this report is not only just the number of schools, but the number of students that are served in diverse schools. So we have 2,000 more students this year being served in diverse schools, which represents 58% of our student population. And so the student enrollment diversity for charter schools, that compares to about 34% of students enrolled in charter schools, which makes up about 1,400 students. All of the data within this report baseline is based on 40th day enrollment, and all of the reports break out student enrollment by tier level. So if a school happens to serve multiple tier levels, that school will be listed twice and will be counted twice, such as East, Magnet, or MLK, as well as a few anomalies. I'll go ahead and go through the report and give you a quick summary on each page. The report includes a copy of the definition of student enrollment diversity, and I'll just remind everyone there's 2 core parts. There's really 4 core parts of student enrollment diversity. The first part of that looks at the race and ethnicity breakdown of the enrollment for the school, and the second part looks at 3 factors, including the income, language, and disability for the student enrollment at each school. So that comprises the student enrollment. The first report is a summary of student diversity for 2013-14 within the district. And this report breaks down all of the schools by tier level, but it includes a specific separation. It looks at district schools that have a form of school choice, and it also separates schools that are zoned only schools. And so some of those schools of choice also include zoned enrollment, and at the bottom of the page you will see a summary for each of the charter schools. To highlight this report, one of the significant findings on this report is that 70% of our zone schools make the definition for student enrollment diversity, while only 30% of the schools of choice meet the definition for student diversity. So that suggests the need to evaluate those optional schools and how we can improve diversity within that student enrollment. Just to continue on, the kind of the paradigm within student diversity within our district is plurality schools. And so plurality, there's a report that looks at all of the schools that were considered plurality last year or this year. So to explain what that means, a plurality school is any school with no majority student race representing anything over 50%. And that also is representative of our district as a whole. So we are a plurality district, and the optimum would be that our schools would be plurality schools in the sense of student enrollment. In the plurality report, you see that 52 of our schools are plurality schools, which represents about 44% of our student population. Moving on to the next report, highlights the changes for student diversity from last year to this year. So this report lists every school that has changed within the status of student enrollment diversity. It helps to highlight any schools that have either moved into conformity with the definition or moved out, as well as schools that have opened up or been closed. And this report also helps to highlight 3 anomalies, which is Cumberland, Jolton Elementary, and Robert E. Lillard. These schools temporarily have the 5th grade for this year only, and so technically those schools are being counted in the middle tier as well as the elementary tier, and that's an anomaly shown on this report that will go away next year. Continuing to move forward, the next report highlights schools that are more than 90% of any one race or ethnicity. And so on this report, you see 18 different schools listed. There's 12 district schools and 6 charter schools. So this report helps to highlight any schools with any one subgroup over 90%, and it helps to also indicate if any of these schools have specialty programs. So some of these schools have no zone and they're pure magnet. In fact, 6 of the 12 district schools are magnet schools or some form of optional school, and many of these schools also offer some form of transportation through a zoned option to attend another school. Continuing to move, the next section of the report looks at staff diversity within our district. And so we provide you with a copy of the definition for staff diversity, and this has 2 primary parts. The first part looks at the certificated staff for a school, and the second part of it looks for the support staff of the school. And so the summary on that analysis is the next page, the summary of staff diversity, in which 42% of our schools meet the definition for staff diversity, and that figure is roughly the very same. It was 42% last year. So that's why Dr. Register said these are really baseline reports that are going to help guide decisions moving forward. Within the reporting for staff diversity, we're not able to look at charter schools because we don't currently collect or at this time be able to analyze that information. Those complete the high-level summary reports. There are 3 additional reports that are attached that provide details, breakdowns for each school. The first report highlights the student demographics for each school, including race, ethnicity, as well as income, language, and disability for the student enrollment. And then the following detailed report indicates all of the schools and how they stand within meeting each part of the definition for student diversity. The last detailed report looks at each school and how they break down for the race and ethnicity for both the support staff and the certificated staff, as well as also showing whether or not the schools meet that definition for student diversity. The report is summarized by including a executive summary for the academic performance framework, as well as providing a report showing the overall status and each of the indicators for the academic performance framework for each of the schools, as this achievement measure is also a part of the diversity management plan. So that concludes the overview of the report, and I will open it up for any questions you might have.
I have one question for you. You talked about Cumberland, Jolton, and Lillard being counted in both the elementary and middle tiers. How does that affect their academic progress? How does that affect the reporting of their academic progress? I just want to be sure that we are not, although they're counted in both tiers, their numbers are not counted twice.
For the academic achievement framework, I can't speak to the details of that, but I believe they're only reported once. And so that fifth grade wouldn't necessarily cause them to be counted twice in that achievement sense.
With the academic framework, are they reported as elementary or middle?
We combine all of the K-8 data together, but high schools that also have middle school grades are reported separately because we have separate high school managers.
Okay.
K-8 is reported jointly.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Ms. Spearing?
Yes. Chris, do you have any recommendations on how we can increase our diversity in our zone schools?
Well, I don't come to you tonight with specific recommendations. This is an effort on the part of everyone. I can tell you there was good dialogue during the task force meeting. I know that each of the 4 work groups that are internally working on this are providing suggestions to Dr. Register to help guide the vision and where we need to go next. But I don't come to you tonight with exact solutions on what we need to do.
So I think the work group concept is what's really important, and actually all of the work groups are required to give me a report by December 15th. I haven't received all of those yet, but between now and the spring is time for those work groups to work on looking at decision-making processes in the district that will promote greater diversity in the district. We are doing a number of things to get this in front of a lot of people now. For example, last week at our general staff meeting, Dr. Stevens was here, Lynn Stevens was here, and did a full presentation to all of our principals, all of our administrators in the district about the concepts here. So the bottom line answer is when we make decisions in the district, we expect the diversity goal to be a factor in every decision that we make. And the work groups are intended to cover that range of decision making that we do. And that ranges from decisions about staffing to how we draw a school zone. And we're doing all of those things now.
And I think too, the task force, and I like Dr. Stevens put it very well when he said, when someone on the task force questioned, basically, what is their purpose? He said to raise the questions. And that's basically what the purpose is. They are put in place to ask the questions that start the thinking process so that it'll start the doing process. And so if you ever get an opportunity, I think the next one is probably in March sometime, if you get an opportunity, come to that task force meeting and just listen to the dialogue of those task force members who actually raised some very good questions about diversity and how it all fits together with the strategic plan. So it's really exciting stuff. But I'm a geek, so I like it. Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Final report on the director's report. I've asked Dr. Changus to give you a brief report. The state report card, the final report card for last year has come out, and most of this data has already been reported in various and sundry ways since beginning last summer, I suppose. But we do have the final report card now, and I would ask Dr. Changus to give us also a fairly quick update.
Yeah, we'll try to be brief. And as Dr. Register indicated, a lot of the information here has been reported previously, and for that reason, I'm going to go very quickly over the state accountability data, which is part of the report card. Just as a reminder, this was the second year of our new state accountability system. We saw as a district significant gains in math while our reading language arts scores remained pretty flat, which is also what we saw statewide in terms of growth in math and flat reading scores. We did meet the majority of our overall achievement targets, and we did see improvement by all of our subgroups, which is why we ended up in intermediate status, which just about a quarter of the districts in Tennessee were exemplary or intermediate. Since the accountability results were presented, we saw the great news last month about Tennessee leading the nation in terms of its growth on the National Assessment of Educational Progress. And I'll mention that the NAEP is not an assessment that we get results as a district. It's used to monitor state standards and state performance. So only a small sample of students across the state, percentage-wise, are reported, and there aren't enough in any district to get accurate results. But what it does say is that we are making growth as a state. So when you see that Tennessee was flat on TCAP reading scores and end-of-course scores, it raises questions as to, are there other factors that might be involved? For instance, alignment between Common Core and those assessments. The NAEP assessment pushes us to meet high standards, but also on very challenging content that may be more sensitive to the NAEP may be more sensitive to Common Core as it's more focused on concepts and applications. The state report card provides a profile demographic data, and one thing that you do get out of the report card is a comparison of the district and the state. And it's no surprise that we have a much larger percentage of economically disadvantaged students. You can see that we're about 14 percentage points higher on free reduced lunch. They show us at 72.4%. And our English learners are 14.7% in comparison to 4.3% statewide. And as you can see in the pie charts on the right, significant differences with regard to race and ethnicity. But these are our demographics for the district and for the state. We have seen our results on the TCAP and end-of-course tests that are used for accountability. The state results are shown at the top of the page for comparison. The percent proficient in advanced, I've added to that. Generally, our scores range from 5 to 15 percentage points below the state, depending on the measure, typically. And that pretty much reflects to the fact that we're considerably higher in terms of free reduced lunch. Unfortunately, that relationship between free reduced lunch and achievement tends to be a consistent one. However, there are schools, there are places where we see exceptions to that, and that's what we have to build on. But this shows not only the percent proficient in advanced, but you see the color coding to the right that shows the percent of students at each achievement level. And I'll just, as a reminder, with our academic performance framework, we're going to look not only at percent proficient in advanced increasing, but getting more kids to the advanced level, fewer kids in the below basic, and seeing growth across all 4 of those achievement levels. We receive report card letter grades with each state report card. And these are based on 3-year averages. And so what you have for 2013 are combined results from 2011 to 2013. On the left, the 2011 data then would reflect the combined 2009, 2010, 2011 results. So we're looking at moving 3-year averages. The numbers shown here range on a scale from 1 to 99. They're called normal curve equivalents. Basically, they're adjusted percentile scores. But a 50 would represent the state average when this scale was set in 2009. What you see numerically, that we're making improvement in every subject. We've seen growth. Our letter grades went up in reading by 1 letter grade, in math by 1 grade, and science by 1 letter grade. We're 1 point away on social studies from getting up to a B. 50 is the minimum for the state scale. But it's hard to move 3-year averages, but we are seeing some positive trends there. And these should be equated in such a way that those scores would mean the same thing in terms of student achievement from one year to the next. So this is showing us trend data. That was based on one-time measures of achievement. The next page, the growth, is based on value-added scores. That's tracking student progress over time. This scale is basically taking those NCE units we saw on the previous graph and comparing growth from one year to the next. So a 0 here represents average statewide growth when the scale was established in 2009. A 0 would correspond on this scale to a letter grade of C. As you can see, we've made growth in every subject over the last 3 years, and our letter grades have gone up 2 letter grades in reading, math, and science, and we're at A's and B's across the board in terms of our growth. With that happening in combination with what we've seen on the most recent NAEP results, it's encouraging that we are seeing progress in our student achievement scores. Graduation rate, we did see a little bit of a decline this past year. We were at 78.4 percentage points in 2012, 76.6 in the most current results. Part of the drop we know is due to changes in state policy in terms of documentation of our dropouts. Any student who leaves us is considered a dropout until we have evidence, documented evidence of where they have arrived. It used to be simpler in terms of documenting those moves than it is now in terms of the paperwork. But schools are working to contact the schools where those students have moved. Of course, we have challenges a lot of times with our English learners who leave us, and we don't have proper documentation. You can see that we're slightly less than 10 percentage points below the state, but if you go back a decade, we've seen growth from, as a district, of 15.5 percentage points in the last 10 years. And in 2003, we didn't have a time limit on graduation. We weren't using on-time graduation formulas we are now. Any student who graduated, no matter how long it took, counted for us. It wasn't until 2004 that we started looking at on-time graduation. So we've made that progress, and we've actually narrowed the gap between our results and the state results. Over the last decade, we were 15 percentage points behind, and now we're about 9.5 percentage points behind the state. Still not where we want it, but it is getting closer to the statewide data. And you see the breakdown by ethnic group and for males and females. We still have a pretty significant gap between males and females, but the gap has narrowed with regard to our race subgroup results. ACT average scores, and it was mentioned earlier in the meeting, we did see a little decline this past year. That appears to be solely due to a change in the policy that ACT adopted this year for reporting. They include their extended time students that take the ACT. That wasn't the case before. But if you adjust for that, and the state took a 0.2 of a point drop as well, and so did the national results. If you adjust for that, though, it still shows that our scores were flat from the previous year. Attendance and promotion data, I have, this comes straight from the Education Climate tab on the state report card, showing our data for attendance, promotion, high school and K-8 separated, and then our cohort dropout rates. I've included on here the 2012 data for comparison. We see that our attendance and promotion rates are virtually identical in K-8. There was a slight decline, 0.4 of a point in attendance at the high school level. Our cohort dropout rate, that's following a group of students from 9th grade through 12th grade, increased 2 percentage points, which seems to be somewhat consistent with the
the drop we saw in graduation rate and the requirements for documentation of dropouts. It seems a little odd that that would occur while our event dropout rate, which is looking at a one-year snapshot across 4 grades, actually is shown as declined. But we knew all along that the 8.8% reported previously was inaccurate. There were some documentation issues on the state side that they were aware of. But we feel the 4.9% in a year is much closer and pretty accurate figure. And we have some discipline data, state and district results. As you can see, there are some pretty noticeable differences in terms of the suspension rate. What you have is an actual count of incidents in the first column, the actual number of suspensions district-wide, and then by subgroup. Then we have a discipline rate that shows the percentage of students who were suspended in a year. So statewide, 7.5% of students were suspended at least one time. In our district, it was 14.1 percentage points. Then you have expulsion counts, and then you have the percent of students expelled. And we saw a slight increase, 1/10 of a percentage point, in the actual percent of students that were suspended in the past year. And that's a pretty quick overview of the data. So I'm going to open it up for questions.
I would love to see some disaggregated data on these expulsions and suspensions. While this presents a decent overall view, I'd really like to get into more detail on, I continue to see our African American population at the highest rate, highest percentage of expulsions and suspensions, and that concerns me. It really concerns me. I'd like to know a little bit more about where these children are, where they're coming from, why are these rates not going down? What is causing such a high rate of suspension and expulsion amongst African American children? It really concerns me.
And when you say disaggregated, in addition to school level data, are you interested, for instance, the types of suspension incidents?
Yes,
We
absolutely.
can provide that kind of information. And I'll work with Tony Majors and his office to get something more detailed together.
Thank you.
It does continue to be a problem.
Yeah,
and it's not just a local problem, nationally as well.
Absolutely.
They refer to the discipline gap that we have.
Absolutely. I actually was at a community meeting the other night where a parent said to me, something's got to be done. And it's something's got to be done. We've got to figure out a way to address this issue, because if it's something as simple as not addressing the needs of these children on a different level, in a different way, then we've got to figure something out, because every day out of school, that means these children are not moving on. They're not progressing academically. The likelihood of these children going to prison continues to grow, because I won't get into that right now, but I would really appreciate getting this data. Any other questions from board members? Okay, Ms. Frog and then Ms. Spearing.
On the ACT test scores, I've heard that the ACT test nationally is normed to a 19. Is that true? And if so, could you explain that?
Normed to a 19.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I can answer that. Can you give me a little more information?
Well, I don't, and I don't really understand it all that well myself, but that is sort of the expected average, I guess.
You're talking about the
yeah.
I think what you're referring to, the actual national average is a little higher than that, but that's because it's generally taken by college-bound students. I think what's happening there, and it's been a while since I've looked at that, is if they look at the demographics of the students who actually take the test and try to assume what the data would look like if they had a true national average, if they had a representative sample of students across the country. And I think that's their best estimate of where that is, that would be the average. But they have 8 or 9 states that administer to basically all of their students, but for the most part it's selected, self-selected otherwise. So there are some assumptions that are made there, but I think that's probably their best guess of where the national average is. So, I mean, and that's a little bit below what our expectation is, in terms of college success for students as well. I will add that there are discussions that are going on right now with the transition to Common Core as to whether we will need the same emphasis on college entrance exams in the future that we currently have, because Common Core hopefully will be able to be used by universities and also identify students who may have needs in terms of some kind of remediation prior to college. And so my hope is, as we move to more of a national test, that we'll have a better alignment with what's already being measured here, but maybe not need to do some of the additional testing we're doing.
And I guess my question is, to put it in different ways, is the test formulated with the expectation that a certain percentage will probably, like a bell curve, like a certain percentage will meet a central point? And I recognize it's different for states like Tennessee because we test everyone and most states don't, but... While the ACT does provide normative data on the students who do test in terms of a percentile score and so forth, it's designed to be what we call a criterion reference test or standards-based test that doesn't have a quota on how many students score at a particular level. However, having been involved in test development at the state level in the past and to some degree a little bit here, I know that typically results, whether you intend them or not, when you have a wide range of content from very relatively easy to very challenging items, the results typically fall along a bell curve somewhat. But that shouldn't be a restriction on the actual performance of students. And it's usually not a perfect bell curve, and sometimes it's shifted in a particular direction. And our goal is to shift it even further on the upper end. But while it may look like a bell curve, it's not designed to provide a bell curve in terms of results.
Mr. Hayes?
Sure. Does the ACT provide an ACT profile report? I have one for the state at the school or district level.
Yes, we have those for every school and for the district. Would you like?
I would love to see that.
We will be happy to share those with you. There's quite a bit of information in there, but there's good information. And schools get those before the district does. They get those typically, I think, in the springtime. And we get ours. We get ours typically in August or so each year.
And then I want to follow up on Ms. May's question earlier around discipline. Within that report, and maybe disaggregation data, I'd also be just curious to see if a document exists. I'm not necessarily looking for someone to create a significant amount of additional work. You might. But if a document exists that talks about the types of strategies that we've deployed around setting school culture and school expectations and then different types of continuing education opportunities and other things that we've done to work with our staff around how do we address this problem of suspensions. I'd love to learn a lot more about it, more than just seeing raw numbers, but some of the strategies that we've used just for my own edification. And
I think the raw numbers will send you to the next level of questions on how we're doing and how well we're doing. So yes, I agree with you.
If I can make one comment, and that would again come from Tony Major's office, but I can tell you that we've adopted in our data warehouse what we call early warning indicators that take into account both attendance and discipline data, and at the high school level, achievement data. And we worked with Johns Hopkins University to identify those measures, but we flag students on a daily basis. The data's updated, and we flag students when we start seeing high suspension counts or attendance issues, and that's a relative concept over the course of the year as to what a high number is, but I know that their office works to intervene in timely fashion when those indicators are set off, but we may have to dig deeper in terms of adjusting where those warning indicators are set.
Ms. Spearing?
Yes. Thank you, Paul, for this presentation. When we look at the state and compare that with Metro, And the fact that we've got 72% of our students are indigent, whereas at the state level it's only 58.6%. And we know that poverty impacts, not that it keeps kids from learning, but it impacts how, what opportunities they've missed, and it puts the impetus on our backs to provide and to help those kids catch up by providing the resources they need. So I think the fact that we've got a state report card for TVOS that's all B's and 1A is very exciting.
It's the highest it's been since I've been in medical.
Yes. And did I understand you to say that that we do have individual school data? Is that what you?
With regard to which assessment are you talking about?
Well,
we have all kinds of individual data. So
individual school data from the 2013 from
the ACT or
no,
TCAP in the course?
The TCAP and TVOS.
Well, the report card, the state report card shows the school level, has school level results on there. I'll see if we have a file that has, what you talking about, the letter grades themselves? Or the actual results? I know we have the percent proficient in advance for every school.
Yes.
So if you let me or let Visha know, what kind of format you'd want. We have the accountability data, and we probably, if we don't have it, we can get the letter grades that the state has assigned.
So I guess you'll be letting Cameo know since Visha will be leaving us.
Yes.
I'm not going to rub that in anymore. Go ahead.
Thank you, Paul.
Academic performance framework does a lot of that, though, doesn't it? And I'm not sure it gets as specific as you'd like, but it pretty much gives you a report on individual schools.
It does, and it's based off of the numbers that we were looking at in terms of percent proficient and advanced on TCAP and value-added scores. It's just an effort to combine those into one report, but we have the data. By subject and quite a bit of detail. Sometimes it can get overwhelming when you start breaking it out by all the subjects and subgroups, but that's why we try to combine that into the framework.
Go.
Okay. So, two things, and I don't want to risk another foray outside of our policy governance model again tonight. But I do want to go back to the data on African American students. And I think that when the numbers become that large, we get into a self-fulfilling prophecy where it becomes accepted, and it's less disconcerting for a teacher or a school administrator. And I've done junior achievement. I've had the opportunity to be in our schools in various capacities, and it is interesting to watch the varying degrees of classroom management that exists there. But my question is there something, and I know I should know, but is there something in the strategic plan, that framework, that addresses student discipline? Because I know it's very heavy on, obviously, academics, and we've got a good piece on social and emotional learning, which is where I would expect to see it. But I don't know that we see anything where we're charging our school leaders to craft strategies, as Mr. Hayes alluded to, around how do we lower the incidence and help to establish a culture where we not only expect academic achievement from our students, but we help them to understand that there's some fundamental things, and behavior and discipline is one of those, that has to exist in order for that academic achievement to occur. And we've heard from a couple of students tonight around that very thing. And again, there may be a little more flexibility in different environments for that to occur, but I don't believe it's impossible. And so back to my question, and you all may be able to speak to this more directly, is there something specific within our strategic plans that we have already discussed are going to roll down to the school level that speaks to that?
Okay, and I'll start the conversation, and others are welcome to jump in. I'm not aware of a specific measure for discipline that's currently in the strategic plan. But I also know that there are going to be multiple levels to the strategic plan, and we know that attendance and discipline data are leading indicators of student achievement. We also have school culture measures and social emotional indicators that are going to be part of that you would hope that would be correlated. But in our reporting in our data warehouse, we can't show obviously end of year test results in timely fashion. So we have interim benchmark data, but we also in our scorecards for schools that they're looking at routinely. The discipline data and the attendance data are among the key measures that are sensitive over time that kind of help forewarn us. But at some level, I think the intent is that we're going to have we're going to drill down from those high-level measures that are currently in the strategic plan to more detailed leading indicators, and that's probably one of the key measures that we would have, but I don't think that part's been finalized, and maybe it needs to rise up. But
and I would suggest that it does,
yeah.
And I think that's what everyone is saying here. I would suggest that it does, because we've had these indicators for a while. I think that one of the initial passes at that dashboard clearly had attendance and suspensions, and that's been data that we've been capturing and have had access to for some time. So one of my suggestions would be I'd like to see how that translates into proactive actions on the part of school leaders to help to reduce that. The other thing I want to make a comment about is the comment around poverty or the socioeconomic statuses that exist among our student population, and how we are, I guess, tasked to address that. Another interesting comment, I don't know if this was when Ms. Frobe was on the panel or not, that was made at that meeting, was that another school operator indicated that he was clearly focused on academic success, that he did not portend to be an expert on social issues. He was not a social worker. He didn't pretend or even believe he had the capacity to address many of the social issues that come as a result of some of the, a socioeconomic status in many instances. And we've had conversations, I know, when Dr. Register and Mr. Henson and I were over at Bordeaux Elementary, the concept of being very deliberate in reaching out to organizations that exist to actually serve that purpose, other metro departments and areas, because we can't, to your point, it's a big lift, but we do not and will never have the capacity within our district to manage all the other issues that our students come with. And this really does play into possibly a lot of what we're seeing in discipline, attendance, definitely in attendance, in discipline and in suspensions. But so one of the other things that I would like to see happen is a plan, and I know we do it to some degree, but a plan to maybe use our community schools as incubators for that kind of deliberate partnership. Where we're not trying to hire a social worker for every school, but we're leveraging social workers that the city already has. That we're not trying to, put backpacks of food in kids' hands, but we're leveraging the social services that exist to ensure that there's food in homes. And so we have to get to the point where we're doing what is commonly referred to as wraparound services. And I think our community schools are a good place to start with that. Because again, what we're looking at here are just, one of my things are symptoms. This is not the problem. And these are symptoms of so many other issues that fall way beyond classroom management, teaching, and instruction.
Yeah, I think what I'd like to say about the strategic plan is this. I think where you'll see embedded across the strategic plan as we go forward is the social emotional learning work that we're doing with the Castle Foundation across the country. The other thing I would say, and we can't really, it's premature to announce this, but we're going to be a part of a major national research project to examine this specific thing and to develop strategies for addressing disparity in discipline and behavioral issues. That should be finalized within the next 2 months.
Any other questions or comments?
Just two.
Ms. Kim?
Thank you. Just to the earlier thread on ACT scores, I mean, there's a number of states, 9 specifically, that require all eligible students to take the ACT just like us. And it's probably good as just like backstory context that even so among those 9, we're 8th. Good old Mississippi, right behind us. And Kentucky. How is Kentucky ahead of us? Okay. So anyway, so I think that's just good context. Like even within like states, I want to benchmark off that. Like I think it's fair to say we are different than Arkansas and Alabama and Kansas, which don't require all their students to take tests, but there are a number who do. So I think that's good, important context. The other thing too is to the discussions about discipline, which, I mean, it is, I agree wholeheartedly with what Dr. Gentry was saying in terms of the symptoms and then trying to get to the root causes with wraparound services, any number of different interventions. And it is just, the thing that actually stood out the most, and I do think it implies though that we may, as a community, be somehow, I don't know, viewing or operationalizing differently, because literally if you're Asian in Davidson County, you're twice as likely to get suspended than if you're Asian in Memphis, I'm assuming, or I don't know, across the state, I should say. And so, and the same, you know, you see these percentages where there's even a gap between the state and MNPS, which suggests that, I mean, that's just odd to me. I mean, that yes, digging in and trying to disaggregate is really critical at the school level, like what's really driving that, because that just seems like a very, very odd trend in this data.
And I can't speak to Memphis and some of the other areas, but I think if we do drill down, and I'd be happy to contact some of those other areas, if we drill down into the demographics within those subgroups, it might be valuable to look at the socioeconomics and other factors that tie into that as well. But our Asian population as a district has changed somewhat over the years too. So I think we can look at nation of origin and some other information to drill into that further. But I'd be happy to talk with Memphis's test director and some others to see if we could do some joint analysis.
Yeah, I was just thinking of my own people, but mostly the larger point is like what's more worrisome is actually the gap even among African Americans. I mean, it applies for every single ethnic group.
Yeah, but I'll just say that when we've tried to drill further into the data, there is a socioeconomic component that goes with this that's often a strong indicator. So if we can break down the demographics, ethnic subgroup as well as free reduced lunch data, it might be informative.
Any other comments, questions? Fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Changus.
Thank you, Paul. That concludes my report, Madam Chair.
Perfect. And since it is now 8:01, we are going to do committee reports, and you each have 3 minutes. We're going to start with teaching and learning. Ms. Spearing.
It's not going to take you 3 minutes. You'll be glad to hear that, right? We're excited that we have the first teaching and learning committee that we're aware of that the board has ever had. And it was an outgrowth of the resolution that Will Pinkston did to establish academic achievement goals for MNPS. And we met on October 22nd and went over our list of guiding principles with metrics for each. And, excuse me, and then Elisa and I met after that to make attempts to tie the principles to the director's evaluation and the strategic plan, and we've got more work to do on that. And then we're meeting again in January, and then we're going to bring it probably a full committee meeting in February.
Thank you, Ms. Spearing. Mm-hmm. Director's evaluation, Ms. Kim?
Sure. So the big headline is that we have retooled the evaluation to better align with the strategic plan. And so there are extensive data elements that reflect what's in the strategic plan. So it took a while, admittedly, to get all the baseline data, lesson learned for next year. But now we have it, and Friday we'll be meeting as a full board to vet it, to give feedback before we then go in the process of filling it out and rolling it out.
Perfect. Thank you. And any other committee reports? No? Good. We'll move into the board chairman's report. There are 3 things listed here, TSBA convention, Council of Great City Schools, and one other. I'm going to move ahead to the class appointment first, and then we'll do the TSBA and Council of Great City Schools appointments or reports. Each year, the Coalition of Large School Systems rotates the chairmanship. And this year, the chair for the class falls into Davidson County. And so our own vice chair, Anna Shepard, will be chairing class for this year. So congratulations to you on that. Good luck.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And let's move into a couple of other things. Council of Great City Schools. I know Dr. Brannon and Ms. Spearing, you both attended. Either of you have a report that you'd like to share?
Sure. I'll go first. Okay, sure. Okay. We attended the 57th Annual Fall Conference at the end of October 29th through the 3rd of November. It was hosted in Albuquerque, New Mexico, with Superintendent Winston Brooks being the superintendent there. We had a kickoff by the superintendent of Minneapolis, Superintendent Silva, who mentioned the elephant in the room in Minneapolis, which was race matters. And she gave an eloquent speech on that topic and how they are moving forward, similar to our diversity plan. We had lots of art and entertainment by the students there. It was attended by 1,000 attendees. It was the second highest attendees in the history of the conference. We had wonderful strands of best practices in urban education, early learning, data. We had presentations by Chris Weber, and he was accompanied by Janae Hayes, Dr. Register, Susan Thompson, and Fred Carr attended. Keisha Ray also made a presentation, and Dr. Poe from Napier made presentations. It's a well-organized conference. Every detail is covered, and I would encourage all of the members of the board to, at some point in your tenure, to attend one of these conferences.
Thank you, Dr. Brannon. Ms. Spearing?
Yes, I've attended a lot of conferences in my day, but this was exceptional. And it was, first of all, it was wonderful to have opportunities to be with educators of large urban districts that are grappling with the same issues that we grapple with on a daily basis. And the second thing that impressed me was the way the council and Albuquerque schools worked together to bring students into the conference. And every day there were a series of music and art on each of the tables that the students had made, and then at the end of the day, or the end of the meal, someone at the table was awarded that piece of art. And Joanne was the top winner, although Dr. Register came home with some too, as well as I. And so that was exciting to see the students and hear the students playing their stringed instruments and the choral experiences that they had that really enlightened what we were doing. One of the sessions that I attended was called What It Takes to Be a Reform Leader, and that was presided over by Kathy Minenberg, who had a 14-year tenure at the Houston School Board, and she suggested that we feel constrained by rules and regulations. Anybody feel that way? And we feel like sometimes we're trapped in a cage, but she said that she thinks that that's a myth and that we can break out of this cage. Kathy asked us to consider how our school board would be different if each day, each of us and each one of our principals did one courageous thing. Could it be that type of mindset that would move us from being a good school district to being a great school district? She encouraged us to take risk and not be afraid of making mistakes. She said that the world is run by people who just show up. She suggested that the future of the country will come from the social sector rather than the business sector. And I think that has a lot to do with social and emotional learning, Dr. Register. This board will soon be charged with finding our next director of schools, and Kathy presented some provoking thoughts on this process. She says we can't hire a new director of schools until we know exactly what we believe as a board. Not what we believe individually, but what we believe by this present board today at this time. And we really need to feel a huge sense of mission. Once we're very clear and in agreement about these items, then we need to put our beliefs into action and get the right people in the right in the right seats for excellent leadership and leverage our community resources. She cautioned, don't take a pot of money from the state or the federal government if it doesn't coincide with our roadmap to success, if it doesn't coincide with our philosophies and our beliefs. Every battle, she contended, is won before it's fought, but only if we know what our beliefs are, what our strategies are. Of all the things that matter to this board, what is the most important thing that we're doing? Is it pre-K? Is it extra reading instruction for our most at-risk kids? Is it a comprehensive reading literacy program that supports kids from all various backgrounds? What is our belief and huge sense of mission? It's our job to pursue this noble cause. And I would like to, at some point, spend some time talking about some of these things, maybe at a board retreat.
Maybe, but not tonight. TSBA convention. Thank you, Ms. Spearing. TSBA convention. Do you have a report, ma'am?
Sorry?
I don't have a prepared report. I would say it was it was a great convention. We had great representation from the board. We'd like to have 100%, but we'll get there one day. We had some wonderful general sessions speakers for the most part. We had a wonderful presentation from the McGavitt Choral Group. Everyone I know thinks I brag on my schools, and I do, but they wowed us. And this was their first show for the year, so they were really good. And we had a wonderful presentation also from, I forgot her name, Dr. Betty. She spoke about poverty, which we've been talking a lot about tonight. And so we were blessed with a copy of her book, and I've already started reading it, and it is profound. And her presentation was profound as well. That's my report.
And you're absolutely right. You don't have to brag on your kids. I'll say this. Excuse me. We had so many people. I personally had so many school board members coming up to me after those kids performed saying, man, they did a great job. Mm-hmm. You guys should be proud. I'm like, yeah, well, we are. So they did a fantastic job. During the, and I don't know if you mentioned that you also presented at TSBA.
I did.
Along with Dr. Steele and Mark Hill with the Chamber. I also presented with Deborah Keys, the Director of the Council of Urban Boards of Education, and we discussed the similarities between urban and rural districts. And it was really eye-opening for a lot of our rural district school board members because they didn't realize that there were similarities. They look at us as though we're a large school district, and so you guys don't have the problems we have. You've got all the money in the world, and it's not that big a deal. But then when you start to break down the differences or the similarities, they start to realize, oh my gosh, we are a lot more alike than we thought. So it was a good convention. The only concern that I have is that because we are a state of mostly rural districts, that, you know, the convention is not necessarily geared towards larger school districts, but, you know, we've got class and we've got our partners in school district crime to sort of bring it all together. So I think overall it was a very good convention, and again, you know, it's right here in town, so hopefully next year we'll have 100% participation. Now, having said that, one last thing on the agenda, or actually two last things. Board members, this is your opportunity to wish Ms. Hawkins farewell. So if you'd like to say something, now's the time, because it'll be stored in the Television Hall of Fame, and she can review it anytime she needs to. So any board member who would like to say something to Ms. Hawkins, you go right ahead. Your mics are on.
Well, I'm glad she's not going far because she is a great resource, and I have appreciated all the support that she's provided, especially in my early time here, and I'm sure I ask a question every now and then, and she goes back and checks when I actually first started this, and why is it that you're still asking? That's okay. She doesn't say all that when she responds, but can I work the bell?
No. You don't get bell rights. Any other comments from Ms. Hawkins?
We can go on to that.
No, we cannot. We're going to say it right here. Ms.
I'm gonna stay
Shepherd.
right here. Visha, you've just been great. And when I first came on the board, almost 4 years ago, and knew nothing and was so green, you held my hand, and you still do, and I do appreciate that more than you'll ever know. You're a fantastic resource, and you're very smart, and we're really going to miss you.
And one word that I will say to you is patience. My sister says that to her grandkids all the time. Patience, and I agree with you. When we walked onto this board, we had the whole idea of what we thought it was about, and you were probably the one person who had more patience, the patience of Job, as my grandmother would say, that kept us from going over the edge and bringing down the entire school system in one fell swoop, because you were very kind and very patient with us, but you were very stern and very strict, and you said, no, that's not it. No. And we appreciate that, and to this day, I really do appreciate everything that you've done for me personally and for this Board of Education, and you will be sorely missed. And if you think about going anywhere, Ms. Bobo. So any other comments, Ms. Beard?
I just want to echo your comments. I hate to have my back to you, Visha, but as a new board member, I've had, my learning curve has been just straight up, and Visha has always taken my questions and gotten back with me very quickly, and even on the weekend she responds to me, so thank you for your leadership.
Ms. Rowe?
I won't take long because everybody said much of what I would say, and I particularly echo Anna's comments, but I call Visha the board mama, which to me is the ultimate compliment, and thank God for her last fall because she was also my personal counselor when I first came on the board. So anyway, I'm only willing to accept this because she is not going very far, and I still have her cell phone number.
Okay. And with that, I will take the time to wish all of our board members a happy holidays, have a safe and Merry Christmas, and a very Happy New Year. And if you need anything from this Board of Education, let it happen after January 1st. Ms. Rowe.
There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.